Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kason.
This is our Disc 2 Xenogears story analysis. How do you like Disc 2?
Better than I thought I would,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, it's not so bad.
If you're prepared for it, it doesn't feel like this. You know,
Yes.
you're playing the game for the first time. You've never heard of this before. It's 1998. It's like, what the heck happened?
Oh, I'd be so confused.
But
Very confused.
when you know it's coming, it's not that bad.
It's not so bad. The biggest issue I have is that things are just happening really quickly.
Really fast.
And so you don't really have time for things to sink in before they've already undid what you thought was a big deal, and it's not a big deal, and they fixed the problem, and they're moving on, and it never really got to sink in for you, you know?
That's true.
So that's difficult, but the presentations, it's all right, you know. I don't hate it.
It is at least artistic and abstract and kind of cool.
Yeah,
It's got a style to it that's
It does.
interesting.
They're all sitting on their rocking chairs like they're old people with the spotlight, just like recapping an old story.
The pendant swinging ching in the background.
Just keeps going.
Ching. And it's like a starry field.
Yeah.
They'll just bring up big like JPEG images of what they're talking about
Yes.
behind them. All right, so Disc 2 opens up with a scene that's actually played twice, and it switches
Once with
perspectives.
Elly. Yeah.
So you start with Fei, and then you play almost exactly the same scene
Yes.
with a reverse shot, and it's Ellie's perspective.
Yeah.
And they repeat a lot of the same sort of poetic language with a few differences between
With a few.
what they say.
But they're awakening to their former selves and realizing that through the many, many years they have known each other
And
in a way.
loved each other and
loved each other.
bonded over the generations or whatever.
With very few differences.
So it's a scene of Lacan and Sophia, actually, but it's Fei and Elly sort of commenting on these memories that feel more like dreams to them. It's like it's hazy, it's like it's there, and there's this familiarity, and they definitely know that this, but it's not. It doesn't feel so clear. It's almost dreamlike the way that they remember this stuff, and it's not, you know, it's kind of jumbled up a little bit, but it's beginning to get clearer at this point. They're starting to understand why they have these feelings. There was a part of Ellie's dialogue in the second playthrough of that scene that I took down that I thought kind of links back to a lot of the stuff we've talked about, the symbolism that's been prevalent throughout the game with the angels with one wing. Right?
Oh, yes.
The nice
she
hand
mentions
symbol.
it in particular.
She says, they are both as vital as each other. They can never be divided, like the wings of angels, like a man and a woman, an unchangeable destiny, feelings one wishes one could change, meeting without the person who would change me, and watching myself change. I dreamt such a dream, a long, never-ending dream. And this more or less fully connects Elly to Sophia and Fei to Lacan.
Yes.
It goes back to that painting scene, right, where Lacan's painting her, and he gets to a point where he doesn't want to finish the painting because that means like
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that touch there.
well, that's
'cause they
similar
brought
to how
attention
you
to
feel
it.
about
Oh, yes.
artistic experiences when they draw to a close, right?
Yeah, I famously don't like to finish games. I hate it because if it's a really good, the more I like a game, the less I want it to end.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. Now, what ends up happening is I end up still stopping playing the game. I just never beat it, you know. So it's its own problem. But yeah, I really felt for that because it was so funny because when we first saw that painting of Sophia, they Satan calls attention to the fact that it's unfinished, and it's like, okay, it's an unfinished. Maybe there's something about the wholeness aspect of things where it's not complete, but there's a reason why it's not complete. And I thought the reason would be a bigger reason than it ended up being, but I really liked what it ended up being.
Yeah.
Because it's more meaningful this way.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh no, he had to go fight a war or somebody killed him right before he couldn't finish it or something, you know. But instead it was like he chose not to finish it for a personal reason. That's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and he didn't want his time, his alone time, you know, intimate, private time with her to end.
Yeah. Now, I was curious about their relationship. I guess she just hired him to paint something and then he'll leave, but it seemed like they were kind of close.
Yes.
She was like, "Call me Ellie." I don't know why she says "Call me Ellie," but for name Sophia.
Well, yeah,
But-
it's like
Right?
she knows that's her real name, Sophia, not Ellie. Remembering Sophia, but Sophia had a feeling her name was
Sophia-
Ellie.
Her name is Ellie.
Yeah, this is my real identity,
Yes.
not Sophia.
By the way, they started. What's the? Okay, never mind. I feel like they started spelling a name differently
Oh,
in disc 2.
I didn't catch that.
But it might just be because Ellie's name is Eliam, something along those
Yeah.
lines, right? But it's Elhaim, right?
Elhaim,
It's Elhaim,
yeah.
and that's how it's spelled. But for some reason, I was pronouncing it Eliam until disc 2. All of a sudden, but
would
now
not-
they're actually writing the full name out. Before, you only saw it written out once or twice, right?
I would not be surprised if he had messed up a character's name for an entire disc
could be
and then
completely-
corrected it on disc.
I'm probably wrong. I'm just saying it seems like we're dealing with a different person now. And even in the dialogue,
Oh, that's-
sometimes when Ellie's talking, she's on the left side of the dialogue screen.
Yeah.
And she's got more of a Sophia look to her now than her old Ellie
Yeah.
look. In certain instances.
Well, on
I've
top
noticed
of that, Seitan mentions this, Fei mentions this, and I'll get more into this in a minute, how she feels different. Like Ellie just feels
Yes.
different. She's
Yeah.
more mature. She's changed dramatically in the last 3 weeks or something
Yeah.
like that since she found that Omni gear in Shabbat. It turned something on in her.
Right.
And
Makes sense.
I think it was either Queen Zephyr or one of the other wise men mentioned like at a certain age is when like these awakenings happen.
It's like 18.
So it's like she has had that experience and she's changed a lot. So
Yeah.
she feels like a different character in a big
Yeah.
way.
But I really wondered if Lacan really wasn't going to see Sophia anymore when he was done painting, or maybe they just didn't get to be that close for that long.
I think
But it seemed like they
he
knew
wants
each
to
other
delay
pretty
the
well.
end of this particular painting. He wants to delay the end. So he's going to go back to his home village to
Right.
get the paints.
To get the paints.
But she's like, why can't you just, that takes super long time. Like, no, it's like, I can't get the right pigments unless I go back home.
It's and I have
So
to
it's
do
like,
it.
I'm going to delay
I have to make
this
the paint.
time. I think it's almost like there's no plan to it. It's just like, I just don't want it to end right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing whatever I can to delay that end.
Yeah.
And so that I can spend more time with her. Because Lacan,
She's probably a busy person.
yeah, Lacan does not appear to be on the same like social rank
No,
as Sophia.
no.
And so
Yeah.
like this is as close as he's going to get to her.
But
technically.
that's what I'm wondering, because I know that's what the story's hinting at. But at the same time, it seems like they already are.
Yeah. And
are
I think that's due to a lot of the
close.
things Ellie and Faye have already mentioned about feeling like I know you from
Oh,
before.
because of Kim. See, once we bring up Kim, then things get even more confusing. But even still, so Faye's connected to Lacan, but I still don't understand that whole thing because of Graf.
Well, I just put that note.
He throws the whole
It's
thing
like
in.
I put down in the note, it fully connects Ellie to Sophia and Faye to Lacan. However, apparently Graf is Lacan, so what's going on with that?
And I just have to ignore it, but that is a huge question mark. It's like,
Yeah.
well, is Faye Lacan? I still don't know. The game is explicit, he is Lacan, but I still don't know
Yeah,
if he's Lacan.
because Graf
someone else is
they've stated outright that
Apparently.
Graf is Lacan
Yes.
many times.
Well, since it's been revealed that Lacan is Graf, I've been wondering about all these other characters who we've seen with masks on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, they probably look like, because initially I was like, oh, they probably are people that we know. Oh no, like Satan's the emperor, or
when they
something
said
like that.
when
right?
they said that Satan was Cain.
Yes.
I was
I
like, wait a minute,
That's
what?
why he wears a mask. But then now I'm like, well, hold on. Maybe behind the mask is just someone who looks like us again instead of,
yeah.
and that's where they're going with it, or something like that, instead of it being actually Bart is Graf or something like that. It's like, no, but there's still a reason for the mask, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Let's see, we still have a bunch of masked characters. We have Cain, we
Cain.
have Graf, we have Wiseman.
Wiseman's still masked. There was the woman, but I think it's clear that that's
Executioner
Miang.
has been revealed.
Yeah,
now.
that's been shown to be
Yeah.
Miang. But is that it? I
I
swear
think
there was
that's
another.
it. I think those are the four
Fair enough, yeah.
main masked people in the game. But anyway, Sophia, throughout this dialogue with Lacan, she mentions something about Cahal escorting Lacan back to his home.
Her followers, right?
Yeah, and I looked that up, and again, it should be spelled with a Q instead of a K.
Cahal. Oh, so it's like Arabic? Or?
It's Hebrew.
Oh, Hebrew.
Cahal was a theocratic organizational structure in ancient Israelite society, according to the Hebrew Bible. In later centuries, Cahal was the name of an autonomous government of Ashkenazi Jews until being abolished in the 1840s.
What the heck? I've never heard of that in my life.
Me neither, but that's what it's a reference to.
Wow.
One of those references that don't necessarily mean anything.
Right, it's just a word.
It's just a word.
But it's a hyphenated word.
It is.
It's a word with emphasis placed on it.
It seems important.
That doesn't mean anything. This happens a lot.
Maybe it does. Maybe I need to do more. But I don't think they mention Cahal anywhere else in the game, as to my memory. So I don't know.
It's just her followers.
If it has much relevance to anything else.
Okay.
Maybe it will later in Disc 2, but I just don't remember if it does.
That's funny. All right.
Anyways, I like the scene a lot. It's continuing to build this sort of mysterious, multi-generational romance between Fei and Elly that I think is paid off really well, even in this play session. So,
these types of stories are more commonly told in Asia and Japan and Korea.
Because of the reincarnation.
Because of the idea of reincarnation.
As part of the culture.
And that often happens in these stories, is that it's like their fates are so difficult, they're destined to never be together, but in their next life they will be together. Yeah. And that is even more romantic. It's like the most romantic possible story you can tell. Is like they fell in love,
this life
you sacrifice,
so that in the next life you can get
but it's the same people,
payoff.
Right?
Yes.
And so that way you can actually have some story elements that, like the idea of you sacrifice for yourself for someone you love. That's the most romantic thing possible. But then you're dead. well, there's this great idea in Eastern Asia that you come back and then now you get to do both. You get to have it both ways. So this type of story of the love through the ages that continues over and over and over is a common Asian story, and it makes a little more sense when you understand the Asian philosophies and theologies instead of Western, where it's kind of difficult to wrap your head around.
And I agree, it is more romantic that way.
It is. It truly is. It's like as romantic as can possibly be, but you'll never see an American story do it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we don't really think that way.
Yeah, we don't have the cultural heritage of reincarnation as part of our belief system. All right, so you come out of that little sequence and you find out that Tara Melchior, the mentor of Krelian and one of the three sages of Shavat, is the one who kind of rescues Fei and Elly and, using nano-machines, heals them of their wounds. Elly was a little more injured than Fei was, so she took a little longer. But he uses his nano-machines to heal
She took
them.
like a little longer.
Like 10 minutes.
Melchior's like, she was way more hurt than you, so it's going to take longer to heal. And we'd been there for 3 weeks, right?
Yep.
And then she's done, 3 weeks and 10 minutes. That's what he meant.
Exactly.
Yeah, she was way worse shape than us.
I noticed that too.
That's all right, because the passage of time, you got to kind of forgive it in these RPGs.
Yeah. But anyways, you talk to him a little bit, and you kind of realize who he is, because he just calls himself Tara. But then Satan comes in.
But just seeing his frame, the shape of his body,
he looks.
It was like that's a little more like Melchior.
Yeah. Also, I was a little confused about why he looks the way he looks. Confused about his race. Like if he's like a native to the planet, or if he's a hybrid human who has been turned in demi-human to look like that, or what? Because he actually looks a little bit like the Gazelle guys.
Oh yeah, like a fat,
but
like a larger blue-faced Gazelle guy.
Like cranial-looking face and blue shade to it. But the Gazelle for sure were humans before, so I don't know why they look like that in their supercomputer. They all picked
that
thing.
avatar for themselves.
But they were humans when they were alive. Right. So I don't really know what's going on with Melchior in terms of what race he is. And I tried to look it up on the wiki, and it doesn't really specify either. I think it's an unknown thing about the character.
Huh. Interesting.
But in any case, he's a nanomachine expert. He was a mentor to Krelian. he helps them heal, and Seitan comes in and sort of joins you there. And he gives you a wristband that has nano-machines in it that will contain id. It manipulates serotonin in Fei's brain so that he doesn't get pissed enough to turn into id again.
Yes.
But it also allows him to access like the id mode
of the
Veltal.
Of the gear. Yeah.
So you can have all the benefits.
It still doesn't turn red though.
Doesn't turn red.
But you get the weird spiky things on your back.
He has like little wingy looking yellow spike things.
Yeah.
But apparently it's like the id system mode of the Veltal. And so a new element of gear battles opens up for Fei's gear, which is kind of cool. And then Taro goes on to explain that these nano-machines he's created can release what's called the limiter seal on humans, right? So like
Yes.
So what they want to do is release these nano-machines into like the upper atmosphere and let them spread over the world, so that all the humans can have their limiters removed.
Yes.
And they can take control of themselves away from Solaris and from the Gazo Ministry.
So there's the psychological limiter.
Yeah.
But then there's also the physical limiter,
Yeah.
which up to this point you would think was just, it just makes them less strong, right?
Yes.
But it seems like there's another reason. Another reason for that limiter.
There's another kind of caveat to that. And this is one of the more misunderstood plot points of Xenogears. So we'll get to that. But they decide they're going to go to this place where, did I write down what the name of the place was? I think I forgot to do that. So many things to remember.
Well, typically
there's like some kind of base, or it's like a really, really old.
Well, it's part of Zeboim, isn't it? Or it's a Zeboim era.
I don't remember.
But it's like a loop.
Because there's one place they go to that's Zeboim era, and I think there's one place they go to that was way more ancient than that.
Okay.
Like 10,000 years ago ancient. First civilization on this world ancient. But that, I think, is the second Anima dungeon where Rico gets his Omni gear.
Oh, right.
Anyways, they're going to these really ancient places. But wherever it is that she ends up going to, I forget the name of it. I'll put it on the screen or something.
It's like a rocket launcher, right?
Yeah, it's like that circular looking thing.
Yeah.
That
which is like the Large Hadron
would
Collider.
allow them to launch like basically the nano-machines into the atmosphere. That's where they're gonna go.
No, as soon as they introduce this, I'm thinking Final Fantasy VIII and going to the moon.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, this might have been used to launch things in outer space.
Oh, right. It does have that,
But the ramp and everything, I thought it was fun.
Yeah. Another connection, this is totally a tangent, but to 2001: A Space Odyssey, is that in the novel, that's what they describe as how they launch their ships in 2001: A Space Odyssey, is like that ramp that just like shoots them up into the sky. So it's another way FF8, I think, was referencing 2001. But anyways, what was the point? They're going to go do that.
Yeah.
But as they're getting ready to leave, there's another scene before that though.
Ramsus.
He allows Elly and Fei to rest for a minute, and they kind of go on the roof and they talk for a bit. And this is where Fei starts to say, like, you feel really different now.
Right.
Something seems to have changed in you. She's like, really? I don't feel different. Like, and they're kind of talking about that. She's not only like different in terms of her maturity. She's starting to question a little bit her feelings about Fei. And I really love where this goes. It seems like a minor thing, but I think it pays off so amazingly later. So I'm just going to kind of bring it up. Okay. Especially in what she says to Seitan in a minute. But okay, they talked up there, and he mentioned that she feels different. But as they're leaving, some guy from Shavat comes in and says, "Oh my gosh, Solaris is launching this attack with this giant mobile weapon, and we need your help, Fei." And this is kind of right off the back of Shavat like wanting to put him into carbon freeze.
Yes,
and
of
so
course.
Ellie's pissed. Like, how can you ask him to do this? No, Fei, don't agree. They were gonna like kill you or whatever.
And Melchior agrees. He's like, you don't need to. You don't owe anyone anything.
Yeah, because he obviously. He has some kind of strained relationship with Shavat based on whatever happened 500 years ago. He's gone into kind of hiding himself. He doesn't really associate with them anymore. So he's like, no, you don't have to help them, right? But Fei, out of the goodness of his heart, being unselfish, I guess, is like, well, regardless of what the elders of Shavat wanted to do to me. Like the people of Ignis don't deserve this, right?
Yeah.
I've got to do what I can to help them. So he kind of agrees to go with them. And so they kind of split up. But before they're leaving, Ramsus shows up and there's a fight there with him. Actually, no, it's not there in the woods. This is where it starts to get confusing.
The fight happens in...
Well, it looks like it.
but it's like way far
It's
away.
described that on their
so
way
close.
to Nisan or to Nortun or something like
Yeah.
that, Ramsus like cut them off. And this is where you start to see that the
trees
game...
looked about the same.
It's
though.
mostly in transitions between scenes. They narrate what happens, and this is like the big stylistic change of Disc 2, where they rush through lots of stuff because they didn't have time to make all of it.
Yeah.
So you'll just cut to Fei or Elly or someone, Citan sometimes, sitting in a chair, like narrating what happens.
With a spotlight on them, almost like they're being interrogated.
Yeah.
And they're just telling you what happened. Just telling
And
the
so
stories.
like he ends up encountering Ramsus on the path that he goes. But before Elly splits off, like I said, she was having that conversation with Citan.
Yes.
And he says specifically that she feels more mature, like a mother. And Elly mentions wanting to spend some time away from Fei to sort out her feelings about him. This feels natural to me given this awakening of the antitype that's happened and the fact that she's having a lot of confusion about her identity. So whatever she felt about Fei before, right, as Elly, the non-awakened antitype,
Yeah.
versus the awakened antitype and, oh my gosh, am I Sophia? Who am I?
Exactly. You feel like it's another person
Yes.
there. It's like this other person likes Faye, but like
I don't know
That's not me.
who I am and what I feel. So I'm going to go with Emeralda to go do this other stuff. And
Esmeralda shows up. She's like, I'm coming too, and I'll do it by myself.
yeah, I don't need your help, right? I like that.
Love it.
But she's starting to have at least a little bit of doubt about what she feels about Faye. Not necessarily like, oh, I don't like him anymore, but I don't know which part of me does and who I am. And so she's just really confused.
Yep.
But then, and then right at the end of that too, almost missed this, Graf comes to visit Tara at the end of that sequence. So when Fei and Elly are gone, right, like Graf shows up. And Tara says to him, like, he basically calls him Lacan.
Yes.
Right?
Directly.
It's like, oh, Lacan, blah, 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 right? And then it kind of fades out. And it's just creating more confusion about, like, how can Fei and Graf be Lacan? I don't get it. But anyways, then you get another Gazel Ministry scene. They
they're
mention
hating on Ramsus some more, right?
yeah, well, because Krellian is talking about sending Ramsus after Fei, and they're like,
Oh,
he's
this is
trash,
previous
he's
to that.
worthless. Why would you even freaking bother with that with him, right? And they mention something about there being another mother, right? So
Yes. But
It's
one
like-
of them is not quite. No, they say specifically who the another mother is.
yes, it's Miang.
Yeah, they say, oh, the other, I can't remember how it comes out, but they say specifically, Miang's a mother, but she's not as completely a mother.
Yes, it's
She's
like
not the mother that they're looking
again.
for.
They're kind of questioning Krellian's like whole. I don't know, like what his plans are, like why he's doing what he's doing. It's like
Right.
it's like, why do you care about Elly so much? Why do you want her back? We have this other mother who's fine for our purposes. We don't need that one.
Right.
And like, why do you want to use Ramsus? He's worthless. He's trash. He's like terrible. Like he's useless, right? And so he's kind of trying to explain to them like why he wants to do what he wants to do.
Yeah, Ramsus seems. I figured we're basically done with Ramsus by the time we learn more about who he is.
And then he actually comes in quite heavily more.
Very
into the
much so,
story.
and it just makes me question things even more. But
They also mention in this scene that the time of the resurrection is near.
yes,
So they're getting close to that time of the gospel.
and in fact, because they seem to know what we're doing, because they're like, oh, even though Etranunk crashed to the earth, we still retain the data from the memory cubes.
Yes.
And so they can still, and they're like, where is he now? Oh, he's in this forest, and he's heading towards a place.
By the
And
way,
the idea is, oh, they're gonna do the thing, but this was all planned. Like they wanted them to release the limiters for the
Right.
people.
By the way,
so interesting.
we were confused about where is the Gazelle Ministries computer. Was it on
Yeah.
Solaris when it crashed? I think it's inside of the Ezekiel, which is the fishbowl ship that Krellian rides around.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure
and
that
then
that's
Satan,
where they are.
when Satan showed up with the Gazelle Ministry, he was green screen. Like that.
Yeah, or
they
they were remotely, because they were on computer screens themselves, right?
I know, but Satan's
they were
in the room with them. He's on the screen
That's
in
true.
the same screen with the Gazelle behind
maybe
him.
he does go into the Ezekiel, because Krellian's in Solaris at the time. The Ezekiel was
I
probably
guess we
docked.
had passed out for who knows how
The
long.
Ezekiel was probably docked at Solaris at the time.
Okay.
And then when
That would make
Yang
sense.
and Krellian escape when it's being destroyed, they probably go aboard the Ezekiel and they leave. So
So the Gazelle's on the Ezekiel.
that's where I think they're at. So
fascinating.
Krellian
I wouldn't have
and the
expected
Gazelle
that.
Ministry are on that Ezekiel fishbowl ship.
So that's considered to be the more safe place to be, not
now that
place.
Solaris is destroyed.
well, but even before that, because
Yeah.
they were put there ahead of time.
yeah.
Like, hey, don't be on the mainland, be here.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that's where they're at. But okay, now we get back to where Ramsus and Fei encounter each other, right?
Yeah.
And he beats him. Fei beats him this time.
'Cause
It's
we have
it's
id
because
mode.
he is the id system
Yeah.
mode, and this like sends Ramsus kind of spiraling again because he had just attained the power where he thought he was no longer
Yeah.
useless. I'm actually stronger than you. I'm actually, the one, not you. And then Fei beats him again, and he starts really losing it. He starts becoming more and more possessed with the idea of proving that he's not worthless again. But Fei kind of rushes past him to go to Kislev. And again, this is where you kind of feel some of the sting of the game not having enough time to be finished. Because I'm sure that upon arriving in Kislev and in Nortune, that they were going to have more with Rico and Kaiser Sigmund. They probably had more
of course.
planned to
Yeah,
resolve
well, they
that
should've.
story. And they just don't do anything with it at all.
Yeah.
It just like is not really like a thing, and they're just narrating, rushing through this. It leads to this big battle where the central block of Nortune is
It's a ship.
an Yggdrasil
Yeah.
model. It's the Yggdrasil 4, and it morphs into this giant gear with 100,000 HP.
Yeah, it's
and you have
freaking
this
crazy.
giant battle against this mobile weapon that can barely damage you at all.
Yeah.
It's like it does like 150 HP damage to you,
Yeah.
and you can do like this giant,
Well, it
massive
was
max
999,
damage to
yeah,
it.
The max.
A really, really stupidly easy boss fight
Yeah.
that they draw. Again, this happens a couple times where they basically describe the whole sequence of story that leads up to a boss fight. So in this case,
which is my least favorite part. That's what
Yeah.
maybe the part that because I like exploration. I'm not happy
Yeah.
that we can't just go
it just tells
wherever
you
we want now.
what happened.
It tells you, and then it drops you into a fight. And I'm like, I don't want the fight. What I want is to experience the story that you just told me, and then not have to fight a boss.
Yeah.
and then explore the world. And this game kind of does the opposite. They just rush through the story, let you fight the boss. For people who love fighting, that's cool, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's not my thing.
It's a shame. It's a
Yeah.
shame because there was definitely a lot of potential in that little arc of like the mobile weapon going on terrorizing Ignis.
You know
like-
how it's like if you tell a really intricate story and then you let your young child finish the story for you, and all of a sudden it turns out that Nortune was a ship, and then it turned into a gear, and then it killed everything. But then there was this other thing that made it so that it couldn't just own the world. But then it just seems like a kid kind of took over,
Yeah.
and not because they couldn't. Not because the idea couldn't have been done well,
Yeah.
but just because it was rushed.
It's rushed so
Because
much.
a kid won't think to tell you the stories
fill
that make
in
it
the
plausible.
details and context
Yes,
and
a kid will just say, and then it turns out the city's a mech. Like, what? Yeah, the whole city. And it goes, boop, boop, and it's a mech. Like, okay, kid. So that's kind of what it felt like
it
here.
definitely has that feel.
But I do feel like they would have, based on what I experienced in Disc 1, it feels like they would have given this proper treatment. It wouldn't have felt that way
Yeah.
if they were able to actually do it the way they wanted to.
It's almost like the game needed 4 discs of material.
Yes, it feels that way, which is crazy because when we first talked, it's like, well, in like episode 1, it's like, okay, they got halfway through the game,
Yep.
and then they needed help to finish it up, and they were behind schedule, but not like a decade behind schedule. They were just like a little bit behind, like a few months, a year maybe behind schedule. No, that's not correct, because based on what we just did in this playthrough is like a whole disc in and of itself, or possibly more, because there's so much story happening here. And it's like this game should have been 4 discs, in which case they were only a quarter done after 2 years.
Yeah.
That would mean this would have taken 8 years to make this game.
It's too ambitious. I mean, the story is just too large and too ambitious.
So, but that puts into perspective just how much they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
It was vastly underprepared for, and that is definitely the fault of the directors. But
if they were going to plan to make Xenogears one game, as large as the story is, they would have had to cut massive amounts of it out. And like, for instance, one thing that I think could have been cut that would have like not totally damaged the story is just all of Rico.
His whole thing.
Just cut him out of the story.
Sure, yeah, don't need it.
Not that I don't want him there. I like the story of Rico. I like the Kaiser Sigmund connection to the ethos, the experimentation that turns him into this Blanca-looking guy. I like the story, but it's like that doesn't contribute to the game's themes as heavily as a lot more of the stuff with Fei and Elly and some of the other more important characters. So it's like, if you're going to make it one game instead of 2 games or 3 games or something, turn it into a trilogy of games to cover the whole story. That's the kind of thing, because that Kislev section was really long back on disc 1. And I mean, it was awesome. I loved it. I don't have a lot of complaints about it as it is. But
if you are...
I would have probably rather had some of the stuff happening here on disc 2 elaborated and fully explorable, rather than having that in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, in an ideal world, the whole thing gets made like disc 1, and it's 4 giant discs that took a decade to make, or it's cut into 2 games, or it's cut into 3 games or something, and the whole thing gets finished. That would be ideal. Obviously, that's what we actually want. But if we're going to have to condense the thing into this one game, 2 discs long, that's going to be made in 2 years and released in 1998, I would have probably removed Rico out of the game. I would have probably even maybe removed...
Hammer?
Well, I guess Hammer would be removed because Hammer... Anyways, they'd have to pick somebody else to betray them at Solaris. That's easy to do, though. But I'm trying to think of like character arcs that like don't really go anywhere, like possibly even Maria, because Maria's is all wrapped up after the Shavat sequence. Anyways, it's like, but I don't know. Anyways, that's not necessary to dig into what should have been cut, as much as it is to say
just
a lot should have been cut.
Could have been absolutely
in order to like
in favor of this stuff. Yeah.
But I will also say this. Playing it this time, I'm not that bothered by the presentation of Disc 2. I'm really not. And so it's like, a part of me is almost like, it's just fine the way it is. We get the whole story, even though it's really rushed in Disc 2. It's almost fine to me that you get the whole thing, because there's no guarantee that they would have been allowed to make a sequel to this anyway.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, I think that's why they were saying just end it at disc 1, and he's like, but the player. Well, the idea is, well, yeah, but then you can make a sequel later, and he was like, I'm not doing that,
risking that.
I'm not, and he was right. Well, in many ways, he was right, because they didn't really want him to do that again.
I would definitely rather have disc 2 the way it is, and have the whole story, than have them cut it at some place like at the end of disc 1,
and then not allow
promise
a sequel,
or set up a sequel and then never actually do it. That would have really sucked.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
So,
no, I agree with you there, because I thought that this disc 2 stuff was going to be more along the lines of Chu retelling the story of what happened at Shavat after we fought, you know, Maria's father, and that I wouldn't have loved that as much, the way that was done right there. But they do an interesting job presentation-wise, and they're showing screenshots behind them of what is happening while it's happening, and it works better than I thought it was going to work.
Yeah, I think it's fine. Yeah. Then you get Elly basically narrating an entire dungeon. They just narrate the whole thing, play it all as they go through that base and release the nano-machines into the upper atmosphere. Now, as you were alluding to, there was kind of an unintended consequence with doing this, where the people's limiters get removed, but all of a sudden people start transforming into wells.
Right.
And a lot of people get the idea that the nano-machines are what turned people into wells.
No, yeah.
But it's actually clarified that Krellian released a virus at the same time. So it's almost like they anticipated
Yes.
the nanomachines were going to get released, and he released this virus that was carried by the nanomachines into people, and that virus is what
That's
it had again, he and Miang have been doing genetic engineering for a long time,
right.
trying to evolve humanity into a certain state that they're looking for, right? And previous failures had resulted in demi-humans and things like that.
Right.
But in humanity in its current state, all it needed was like this trigger of this virus to start mutating them into wells, which was their whole plan the whole time. They're trying to turn people, all of humanity, into wells, because they then meld them into weapons and things like that. Part of this was alluded to with the Oxen and Seepson, where their neural networks were made with well bodies,
Right.
which is why they have a certain level of autonomy, the gears themselves, right? Because they're actually comprised, their brains are comprised of wells. So they have wells inside of them, souls, human souls. They're their neural networks are made of humans, but the wells transformed into wells. And so, yeah, Krellian released a virus simultaneous with the nanomachines, and the nanomachines combined with them and carried them into people. That's what triggered this mutation, which was part of the genetic engineering that they had set up.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes
They
sense.
couldn't have just done it. Why did they do it then?
Why did they do it at the time the nanomachines were released?
They could have just done it whenever.
No, I think the virus has to be carried by the nanomachines somehow. It's like they need the nanomachines to carry the virus, and because remember, these nanomachines are at the atomic level, right? And
they don't have nanomachines.
Well, they had. Okay, so Krellian's work on nanomachines, remember, was not complete until he.
But Krellian learned his work from Melchior.
Yes.
And Melchior has these
And
nanomachine
they
things.
had a rift at some point.
Yes,
Right.
but why, if Melchior for 500 years has had the machines that Krellian has been looking for?
I think Melchior has
But
been.
I thought he had to go to Zebulon
I
to get that
think
machine.
Melchior has been well hidden. He disappeared and no one knows where he
So
went.
Melchior had the Zeboim technology.
I don't know.
Okay.
It might be that Melchior actually just figured it out over the course of
over the
500
course of however
years,
long.
and Krellian couldn't find him. So his backup plan to that is, well, the Zeboim era had these nanomachines. Let's go get those so I can study how they did it and fill in the gaps of my own knowledge.
Okay. So either way, what Melchior has is the Zeboim technology,
I think so.
not just the
The
lower
really
level.
beastly nanomachines.
Right, yeah, that can do, they're smaller probably.
That is my headcanon.
Okay. sounds
I
about
don't
right.
know if they ever actually specify that.
No, they don't. So some of this was very confusing. I do remember them talking about the virus, but I had kind of forgotten it because it didn't really jive
It's
with
so rushed
It's just
through.
random. It's just oh my gosh, they're doing this thing. Let's launch the virus. Is that the geisha key, or does the geisha key come later?
No, the geisha key comes
Okay.
later. That's even
So
different
they
thing.
launched they launched the virus, but it's just so sudden. And I guess it's because we know where they're going because our save cubes still work, the memory cubes.
Yeah, the memory cubes.
And so we know what they're going to do based on where they're going. So now we can.
Yeah,
But-
it's like they
But
basically
everything we're doing is helping them accomplish what they're doing.
yeah they have been adapting
Do we
their
know that?
plans by watching us through the memory cubes for a long time.
Right.
So originally, the Gazel Ministry, for instance, they were going to actually resurrect into gear bodies, kind of like Nikolai or Hammer or something like that. That was their original plan, to collect the animal relics and combine them with gears, and they were going to become, their bodies were going to be those half man, half gear things. But then they realized the anima potential of the party traveling with Fei. And they were like, oh, these people would be
Right.
sufficient bodies for us
Yeah.
to actually go into. Let's actually let Fei come here, bring them along, and then we'll take those bodies instead. So they've been kind of adapting their plans as wrenches get thrown into it by
Yeah.
watching and surveilling them through the memory cubes.
That explains a lot. That's
Yeah.
all, that. A lot of this makes more sense.
Yeah.
When you look at it like that. Okay.
Okay. So, anyways, yeah.
so everyone
The
turns into
virus.
wells.
Not everyone.
I know.
It's like
A lot of people do.
some people do, some people don't. Some people are way worse than others.
Yeah, some people have just a
They're
little bit.
lightly mutated, some are heavily mutated, but it is an enormously painful thing.
Yeah, and it makes them just kind of go crazy. And
Yeah, and it sort of creates this new hierarchy, social hierarchy of what they call haves and have-nots.
Yes, yeah.
So like the haves are the people who were either like had no transformation whatsoever. Like so the nano-machines carried the virus, but they genetically are not designed as Krellian and Miang had sort of been watching over to have the trigger that does the mutation.
Right. I took this a little bit differently. I read it to be more like the mutations are random, but whoever is genetically superior, whoever is a more
I think that's the way they put it.
Yes, that's the Nishan Übermensch idea. You move towards that, right? So all the people who have a lower genetic quality, whatever, they became the Wells. But people who were more like genetically superior, they didn't get affected.
I actually think it's the reverse.
Oh.
So it's because the people that Miang and Krellian would deem genetically superior are the ones that did mutate.
Oh, really?
Because what they need are the mutated humans for their plans.
Okay, I was thinking the other way around. I thought that they wanted the bodies to be the gazelle bodies and the people and God and all that stuff.
The reason why
I thought they wanted a perfect human for that.
The reason why the party doesn't mutate is because they have the animus factor that the gazelle want. They want their normal human bodies.
Right.
Normal people are sort of like there's a spectrum of genetic superiority, as Krellian would deem it or Miang would deem it, where the less or so would not be triggered. The trigger would not happen.
Reverse of what I thought. That's interesting.
But those who did mutate, those are the humans we want for the plan. They're the ones who genetically evolved the way we wanted them to.
I keep thinking with Wells that things are going wrong, but I guess things are going right.
Wrong for them, as in the people who have to go through it, right for Krellian's
So they
purposes.
are trying, because I keep thinking something else. I guess it never really entered my mind. That's what they're trying to create.
That's what they want.
That's
really... what Krellian and Miang want. They want Wells. So
that's crazy.
And so now they have the Soylent system, which is like a network of factories and facilities that process wells and create these super weapons with them, right? So, and they show that. They show like just the little mass clumps of fleshy balls combining into these like monsters and things.
Crazy,
right?
Yeah. Because it sounds, okay, am I wrong in this? It sounds like they're looking for a new host for God, right?
How do I explain this?
And if this doesn't come up till later, that's fine.
I'm trying to decide if they have said it yet or not.
Well, I think they said something about it, where they're like, it's time to resurrect God, and we need these humans to be different for some reason. My thinking was these humans will become the avatars for the new God. That's what I was thinking, but then I guess they want a monstrosity to be God, right? To be this monstrosity as opposed to like a person.
I'm going to hold off just because I'm not sure if they've actually said it yet, but we're so close to that answer.
Okay.
And
that's part of why I'm so confused. They're purposefully making wells for their own corrupt whatever reasons, but they're also doing something to humans that has the result of creating wells in the pursuit of resurrecting God in some way. So that's where I'm a little confused. But okay.
I think that will be answered like very soon on the next play session. But the people essentially go willingly to these Soylent factories because the promise is made to them that it will they'll be able to free them of the pain of the molecular changes happening in them, right? It's like you'll be free of pain, but what they're really doing is taking them and processing them and just like combining their masses of flesh into these like monster weapon creations, right? And so the party tries to stop this. They try to go to these Soylent factories and destroy them and convince people, no, you don't want to do this. But, and this definitely probably, well, not definitely, that's a contradiction. It definitely has some relevant like social commentary for even like up to today now with these haves and have-nots, right? So the party are haves because they didn't get mutated, and they're trying to tell the have-nots what they should do.
Yeah.
You should not go to the Soylent system. You should not trust Solaris.
Yeah.
You should, come for treatment in Nisan with Melchior. And they're like, you can't tell me what to do. You don't know my pain. You have you're a have. You're a person of privilege. Let's put it that way. Yes. You can't talk to me about what I should do. There's this disconnect, and it's hard for Elly to break through to these people because of that. Until they actually get into the factory and these monsters start breaking around and eating people.
Yes.
And so there's a boss fight there against, I forget the name of the boss. It was kind of a cool name. It's like Sufra something or other. Sufal Mass or Sufal something. Anyways, it's a big giant
I do
monster guy with some other wells, and you fight that thing. And then Elly gives this really great speech.
Yeah, and in the speech, she's like, they keep shifting to like a Sophia.
Yep, it's like goes back and forth.
Yeah, as to who's talking.
Almost like she did it 500 years ago, almost the same thing, right?
Right.
She's living a role again.
Yeah. Is it who's Bart's cousin? What's her name?
Margie.
Margie. She keeps commenting like, you really resemble Sophia now. Like you used to before, but now you really do.
Yeah.
And Elly doesn't quite know how to take that, I guess.
Yeah.
But this stuff keeps happening. She keeps more and more and more doing and saying and acting the way that Sophia did.
Yeah, and her speech really kind of is a breakthrough for these have-nots, right?
Right.
They finally restore some faith.
Well, she talks about like offering herself in some way.
And then there's that little anime scene where the boss you just fought, she cuts herself and the blood goes into the mouth of the enemy, and it sort of eases its passing.
Tell me what happened in that cutscene. I know the whole thing, but I want you to tell me what happened there, because there's a few moments there that are very confusing.
I believe this is related to what Kraulian revealed back in Solaris with her blood, her genes having the Ouroboros ring.
Oh yes, the life.
Like the foundation of humanity, or however you put it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like her blood, which carries that Ouroboros ring, is almost like a healing property or something for people who are turned into wells. She can ease their suffering.
I like that.
Because she actually has like the true genetic foundation of all humanity in her. And so that's what I kind of see as what she's doing when she cuts herself and she lets her blood flow into his mouth.
What happens to the well, though?
I think it dies, but it's like she
can the
eases
wells not
it.
just like kill itself? Wells, can they not just?
Well, I don't know how in control they are. Their minds are kind of gone, right? This happened in Solaris. Remember, all those people that are getting transformed in wells.
These people seem to be reasonable, though, in more or less.
Some of them are not like fully transformed. So remember in Solaris, that guy who was like, "Hey, I had a dog in Kislev. Don't open this thing. Something's happening to me."
Yes.
In that moment, he was reasonable, but as he continued to transform, he lost his mind and attacked you.
Because I'm wondering why they aren't all attacking Elly.
I think it's various stages of transformation.
But they're all reasonable. If any of them weren't, they'd be attacking her.
Well,
or each other, or somebody.
Well, I don't know if they're fully mutated into the form where they would lose their mind completely yet.
That's what I'm...
But regardless of that, she breaks through even the ones that are highly mutated, that are close to losing their minds, and kind of gets them to remember who they are. And then they go back to Nisan and they get treated with nano-machines, which reverts some of their mutation. And there's, again, the people who are heavily mutated couldn't be fully healed, but those who are lightly could be totally restored back to normal. But there's something about Elly's power as the antitype, something about her genes, where she can actually like restore people's humanity, or at least ease their pain if they're too far gone.
Right. So, in that anime scene, she drops blood in the thing. The thing, I don't know what happens, but then you see Fei.
I think he just says Elly or something, right?
Okay. This may have been the way that it was done artistically. I'm thinking about this now. It may have been a cut. Was it just a cut to Fei and then back to the thing?
I think
because their faces occupied the exact same part of the frame.
I think it's just a cut.
It seemed as though
like they were
the well disappeared and it was Fei's face
somehow.
And then you saw the well and it was like Fei was the well.
I don't think that was intentional.
Okay.
I think they just cut to him because he was just like, "Oh wow, Elly, you're like
way less
your role."
way less confusing then. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, and it could be it's possibly completely my fault that I saw it that way, but that is how I saw it in some weird way.
Yeah, I can see why you did now that you bring it up.
Yeah.
But anyways, they get rid of all these Soylent system facilities. They bring the mutated people back to Nisan where they get treatment, right? So there's that's like the kind of the end of that whole mutation arc that they really rushed through. And Melchior is continuing to improve the nano-machine treatment. So it's like over time he's getting better at helping people revert back to their normal human form, to where even the highly mutated people can start to be fully restored again. But then there's a whole nother, the geisha key that triggers it again. And we start to learn about the geisha key in the next scene.
Okay.
But Elly is basically fully fulfilling her role as Mother Sophia here. She is fully integrated as a Type 2, Enya Type 2 now. She's totally left behind any of that like -8 that she sort of goes towards. She's lost any like desire to fight or kill. And like Fei starts to notice this, and he starts to try to get her more and more to like not go with them when they fight.
Yes,
right.
Yes, because she has a
how
whole
difficult
separate
it is for her to do that. She's like really pained by violence now.
Yeah.
Right.
And she has such a higher calling. Like she's helping the world.
Yeah.
And they are too in their own way, but like the people need her.
Yeah.
Like if she's gone, the people don't have hope.
Exactly. So we get another Gazo Ministry scene here where they're prepared to use the geisha key now that that plan didn't work out with the virus.
Right.
It's like we can use this geisha key to initiate the transformation we want on the well, to turn people into wells. But Cain won't allow them to do it. It's not even just that he commands them not to. He has some kind of power that will not allow them to do it.
So he shows up on TV and he just starts beaming this.
He has some kind of power. It's not explained at all.
But then they just turn off his TV and they're fine. Like it didn't do anything.
Well,
it didn't hurt the gazelle. It didn't
kill them. He just stopped them from using the geisha key.
Oh, so
his power is specifically, this power he's using is specific. I know that they were kind of like, wow.
Yeah,
they looked like they were in pain.
Like he was
but
like
I think that this
attack.
is more to do with he has some level of control of that geisha key, and they can't use it if he doesn't let them. So this is where we start to see like a split between like the three current like villain factions and their like vision of the future of humanity. So like we pretty clearly know, because the Gazo Ministry has explained to us what they want.
Yeah, very explicitly, yes.
Krellian has been a little less clear, and now we know that Cain is not. He does not want the Gazo Ministry to use the geisha key to do that.
In fact, some through in some weird way, probably through Satan's connection to the Emperor, it has seemed as though
he has changed.
Cain might actually be on the better side.
Yeah, he's
of the
more a protagonist now.
Yeah.
And he has changed his mind about this. And because Sidon convinced him, humans don't need managers anymore. Remember in that scene, he was like the Annabelli, or whatever that word was we used, which was the role of Fei, right? Like the man of God who would come like lead humanity to the glorious future. He convinced Cain that the contact, Fei, is not a threat to the world and to their plan. And so Cain gives in to this idea, humans don't need managers anymore. They don't need us. They don't need me or the Gazo Ministry or the other people. But he seemed to believe Krellian was on his side. And so he was kind of helping Krellian somewhat. And he was going against the Gazo Ministry. We learned that that is not necessarily the case, that they're not necessarily aligned, because he stops them. Cain stops the Gazo Ministry from using the geisha key. Krellian talks to the ministry a little later, and they decide to use Ramsus to get rid of Cain.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a minute, because that comes a little later. But this is how they know that they have to get rid of Cain now if they want to do what they want to do.
Right.
Because he's stopping them from using the geisha key. But you have to go to a couple of different anima relic dungeons to recover the last anima relics that are not already obtained by the Gazo Ministry. And this would transform, because we already have like the Veltal in its ascended id form. We know where Elly's Omni gear is. It's in Shavat. I think Seitan's gear has already transformed into Omni gear at this point, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that. But Bart's is. There was a whole mission
Yeah,
for
Bart's is there.
the Andvari. So it's like Billy
Billy needs one. Rico.
and Rico need an Omni-Gear. Maria's is already kind of an Omni-Gear because it was developed in Solaris, but she doesn't network with it. It has its own autonomy. She just tells it what to do. So she doesn't get one, and Choo Choo doesn't get one. She just grows into a giant Choo Choo.
Yeah.
So it's like there's 2 more Anima relics that will get Billy's Omni-Gear and Rico's Omni-Gear.
Yeah.
The first one you go to is for Billy. And I like both of these dungeons. These are the first actual legitimate full-length dungeons you get in Disc 2. Not narrated, not just like, here's what we did, and then you got to the end, you fight a boss. They're actually legitimate dungeons you
With
explore.
like puzzles and...
Yeah, and they're pretty good.
Yeah,
I like
it was good. I like these dungeons.
I especially like when you're like getting into the depths of them and you're about to go into the room where the Anima relic is. They have those like giant linchpin locks on the doors that just go
Yes.
and it like
Yes.
opens and you go to the next level. It's like the sound design and just it's really impactful. Like there's something really big kept in here.
And there's just multiple doors, like 3
Yeah.
separate doors or something. Yeah.
Really cool. Then you get in, it's like, oh, there it is, the Anima relic, right? And so you go get that one for Billy. And then you go to the other one. And this is the second Anima Relic dungeon is the one that is in a place that was from the first civilization.
A long time ago, yeah.
The original civilization after the Eldritch crashed, right?
Yes.
We don't know much about that one yet. We have not seen much about that civilization, but this is where like Cain and the Ministry like first came from.
Yeah.
Their original civilization.
Yeah.
And we're going to learn a lot more about that in the next episode. But let me see here. I think it's at the end. Is it the end of this one or the other one that you run into the element girls?
We in this one. We ran into
the
them this
second
one.
element dungeon or the first element dungeon? Or the first Anima dungeon?
I can't remember which dungeon, but
I think it's the first one where Billy
that
gets his.
makes more sense to me.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Anyways.
They're so useless.
Yeah.
But they combine into a single mech kind of thing. Because we have fought them twice. We fought them once separately.
There's some interesting kind of philosophical debating that goes on here between the Element Girls and like Elly and Fei about
Like Dominia.
they're like social Darwinism.
Yes, of course. The survival.
The strong should devour the weak.
Yes.
And that's like what's better for humanity, right? Is that the strong survive and the weak
more
fail.
Ubermensch ideas, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're kind of arguing about that. And I love Ellie's sort of rebuttal to that. And it kind of is one of the larger, it plays into one of the larger rebuttals to the idea of social Darwinism, which is like social Darwinism is about species survival, not about individuals within the species. Like the only reason the human species thrived the way it did is because they came together.
Yeah.
They helped each other, right? It's a social species.
And
it's not because strong individuals like dominated. It's because we became more collectivist.
Sure.
Right? So like there's that whole
it's like a big process.
Counterpoint to the idea of social Darwinism as accepted by the elements and as accepted by Ramsus and like their whole ideology that drives them. Is that, and she makes the point at the end, like, you were all super weak too.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is. And it's not until you came together and found strength in each other and built each other up that you started to find your strength. That is what it means to be human.
Oh, one of the girls says something so funny after that. When we leave, after we beat them that time, I can't remember which one, but one of the girls says, she sure told us. But it seems not sarcastic.
Yeah.
It seems
they
like,
accepted
at least that's the way I read it, was like she just let us have it, and she's right.
The mother, the antitype, is their mother in some ways. Basically
true.
just like told them what's what.
Yeah,
and they were kind of put in their place.
Gave them a spanking.
And realized that they were kind of just naive little girls, which is what they are.
Right.
And they're brainwashed, right?
Yeah.
And Elly like really set them straight. And so I really, really liked that part of the scene.
That was good.
I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on this, but what I didn't like about it was the actual like 5-minute like gear combining
Oh my
transformation.
gosh! And as they were jumping through miles of the, now that's an anime thing, right? Where it looks like they're just.
Did you
flying.
take note of the music there?
Oh yeah, not like no, I didn't take note.
It's Flight.
Oh, is it? Oh my gosh! Of course it is.
It's Flight.
So that song can just be used willy-nilly whenever.
Well, apparently Masato Kato thought so.
Yeah.
I don't think Yasunori Mitsuda did. This is something that people have fought me on a little harder than, say, like the use of it in Choo-Choo's scene earlier.
Yeah.
Where people think it's appropriate. And a lot of that has to do with like the name of the song, which is Flight. And so some people associate that theme more with ascension, going beyond your limits,
As opposed to
soaring,
like a
flying.
particular character.
Yeah,
or moments.
and I have a couple of rebuttals to that. First of all, if you're just going to write a generic soaring, overcoming your limits theme, why would you then use the same melody that was so strongly attached to Maria and her relationship with her father? If this was meant to be used outside of that context, why would you use the leitmotif? It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
It does not align to me that that theme, Flight, was intended to be used as some generic soaring type,
Yes,
joyous, triumphant song.
even when the antagonists are ascending.
Because
Yeah.
we know as a composer, you don't use leitmotif without a reason.
Right.
Like, you're not just going to say, I'm going to use this melody that I created, and he has said, specifically as a theme for Maria, in this song that is to be used in this context that has nothing to do with this character at all.
Yeah. that
That's
would
just not
be
what he would have done.
proper use of the art. In that sense, because if you talk about it has something to do with Ascension, the idea could be then that this song would fit basically anywhere, because Ascension
yes.
is one of the themes of the game.
It would have
So
been like a generic.
put it in any battle, and but they ascended because they won the battle. Like, okay, but that's
Then why use,
too broad of
why
a theme.
use that melody?
Yeah, melodies are written for more specific themes, not so much that much of like a broad theme.
Right.
You know.
On top of that, the context in which it's used, which is before the battle is fought, is not one that I think fits the emotion of the scene. These are characters, the elements, who are a danger to us and everything we're fighting for.
Yeah, they're antagonists for sure.
They are the philosophical opposition to what we are fighting for. This moment is not a joyous and triumphant one
Yeah.
because they are a threat to us
Right.
at that moment. So even if the song wasn't using Maria's theme and it just had that feel to it, that joyful, triumphant, like positive major scale
We're
feel,
joining together to fight,
yeah, here we go.
but they're the
It's
bad guys.
still, yeah, they are our philosophical opposites. They are threatening us.
Right.
I don't understand why that feeling is appropriate. I just don't get it. I don't get people's argument because it just doesn't feel like that should be what we're feeling, watching
Right.
the elements turn into the most powerful form that we're about to face in battle.
Yeah.
They are not protagonists. They are the antagonists. They are about to fight us. They are threatening us. They are, like I say, philosophical opposites. Why are we getting this joyous theme as they transform? It makes no sense to me. It feels totally wrong. I feel it's totally inappropriate.
I agree, except I don't really remember that moment all that well. So, I mean, I remember the visuals a lot because I was like, oh, this is like so anime. And you can tell, I'll bet you, what's the... Tetsuya Takahashi? Is that it?
Yeah, the
Tetsuya
director.
Takahashi? Bet you he had a blast at like arranging or seeing how, or at least directing how the arrangement of these things, because he was like way into mechs,
Oh,
right?
sure, yes.
And the way that everything fit in and it evolves
Yeah.
like,
I've always,
it's like all these crazy different things happening.
ever since
He probably loved
ever
that.
since I saw Transformers, I thought what a nightmare it must be to be able to
To make it all make sense.
make a car or truck or whatever machine transform so intricately into this machine, and all the parts are
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah.
It's just
'Cause
like,
you
how?
see the transition happen on screen. You see it happen.
How on earth
Yeah.
do you plan that
I
out?
don't know. They did a pretty good job. there.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is some intense engineering going on
Yeah.
and design that is beyond my artistic
Yeah.
scope.
The-
I have so much respect for people who can figure that out.
I know, it's crazy. Because you have to visualize like not just the thing or the end product. You have to visualize the potential of everything,
Yeah.
But these weren't to that level.
No,
but still pretty
not as
intricate.
many polygons.
Still pretty intricate.
I think probably several million less polygons.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Anyways, I love the scene overall, though.
it's good.
Elly says here, some things only the weak can feel, but weakness does not make them servile. It's because they are weak that they can develop kindness and never look down on people. That is where real human interaction comes from. Everyone has weaknesses. Even you did at first. Your weakness drew you to each other and made you grow strong. Never forget those feelings when you all live together side by side. And this kind of brings together something that really hit home to me in this playthrough. Something I've just been thinking about generally, and it really struck me with this, is people kind of are motivated by fear or by love in the things that they do.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of setting up these opposites in the characters here, where they're either motivated and they act based on their fears, or they're acting based on their love. And to me, it's those who can acknowledge their weakness and can develop the humility in that to see where they need to grow, where they need to change, the fact that they do need others, right? They develop this ability to love one another and act on that love and are motivated by that love. Whereas those who fear their weakness, who are full of pride, who will not allow themselves to admit those weaknesses, who adhere to this social Darwinism and I'm gonna be the strongest so I can survive, they're acting on a fear there. It's a fear of weakness. It's a fear of worthlessness. It's a fear that Hammer and Ramsus and the Element Girls and all the villains are acting on. They're all afraid. They're all afraid of something, and so that fear motivates them, and it usually leads them down this path.
Well, that's
and
fascinating.
As Elly is showing here, it's when you accept your weaknesses, when you come together, it's like weakness and humility builds your ability to love, and when you act on love, you're doing things for the benefit of everyone, right? It's just something that really hit me, and I think it's really pretty profound.
I agree. I like that theme, and also that is kind of Fei's story, where at the beginning of the game he's acting more out of fear, and as things have slowly progressed, built more relationships, and specifically gotten to know Elly, he has slowly begun to do things not just out of fear, but more out of love. The him deciding to go help save Shavat, which was very lightly glossed over in this disc, was basically that. He used to be afraid to even help a child who was in imminent danger from somebody about to smash them. He didn't want to help the kid because he was afraid of something in his life or whatever he might become, or what do I do now? He was afraid.
Totally afraid.
But now that he's acting more out of love of not just the people around him, but broader, broadly speaking, everybody, more or less, he's willing to go and do stuff that kind of totally out of his business, completely way out of the way.
It's a great point with Fei. Fei
was
totally motivated by fear through the whole beginning of the game.
And it slowly, and you can't even tell at what point it stopped happening and he was motivated by something else, but it's a process. And it's cool. They did a great job in the game of showing that.
Tremendous character development. Elly was motivated by fear early on too. And it's like, as these two characters have accepted their weaknesses, which was in large part due to their conversations with each other, they bonded over the fact that they could be vulnerable with each other. They could admit their weaknesses. They could look inward. They could see where they needed help, and they helped each other. And that developed their love, and it dissipated their fears. And they were no longer afraid when they were together. And that's kind of like the whole point of the way that our need for social interaction works. It's like, when you feel like you have those connections and you can be vulnerable with people, it sort of dissolves those fears that you have. The more you isolate yourself, the more that you try to take everything on yourself or prove yourself, that's motivated by that fear, and it leads to a bad place, and it leads to a fracture of your psychology, of your confidence, of yourself. You slink into your shadow instead of developing your inner opposite. And it's like all of that philosophy really comes together. I feel like in what she's saying in that speech to the elements.
3 sentences.
It's like all there.
Yeah.
And it's just really well done. It's like they're really paying off on all of that philosophy that they're pulling from all those sources.
Well, I'm glad that they didn't just, brush over this particular moment, because they easily could have.
Yeah. Okay, so after that scene, you get back to the Gazelle Ministry, and Miang is there, referring to her as mother again, right?
Yes.
And this is where
was it then.
they're asking Cain to be used, they put it in quotations, Cain should be used to kill Cain.
Yes, of course.
So this is pretty confusing. What did you make of that?
Well, I didn't know until the thing happened later on.
Well, yeah, because since we know Ramsus is used.
Yeah, I still don't have a clue at all what's going on there. But, what I am most confused about is Krellian saying things like, I created something for this purpose.
Yeah.
I created you, I created you, I created like all this stuff. It seems like Krellian would even predate Cain, because the way Krellian talks, he says, I created you.
Yeah, I can see why you would feel like that, yeah.
I created you
unclear.
For this purpose, I created you for this other purpose, and I created you. But Cain's been around forever. He's cursed to live forever.
Yeah, so Krellian has only been involved since 500 years ago.
That's what I had gathered from the phase memories.
But he has done a tremendous amount of, he's been involved in all the genetic engineering. So that's usually what they're referencing in him creating things.
Okay.
He's using genetic engineering, manipulation of the genes to, well, we already know, actually I copied this down. So let's do this as a way to hopefully clarify a little bit of what's going on with Ramsus and his connection to Cain here. So much earlier in the game, there's another Gazelle Ministry conversation where Gazelle Blue #1 said, "This can't be. The panic has spread to Entrenunk." And Krellian says, "Those fools who we call citizens are easily manipulated by the Emperor's word alone." And another Gazelle Blue says, "You think Cain will be receptive?" So they're trying to decide whether they can persuade Cain to talk to the people and calm them down at that point in the game. And so he's like, "Do you think Cain will be receptive? Do you think he'll do what we want?" And then another one, the Red Gazelle says, "His body already is at the limit. He can't hold out much more."
Yes, he's reaching the end of his life.
His life, right?
Yeah.
And so Krellian says, "As usual, a clone may be used. Those fools won't know the difference, and even if the barrier fails, it will not be like the disaster before." So they've been using clones of Cain to speak to the people. Remember we mentioned that actual speech where Cain came up and spoke to the people? That was not actually Cain. That was one of these Cain clones.
You don't need to clone somebody who's always wearing a mask. It doesn't
You just
matter
use a
if they
body
look exactly like the person or not. That's interesting.
But now with that understood, with the reminder that they have cloned Cain before, right? Ramsus, let's see, are we up to this point? I just want to make sure I'm missing anything here.
Well, there was a thing that happens between here and
there's another Anima Relic dungeon.
Assassination.
And like hammer and everything.
Yeah.
Let's skip that for a second to clarify this, and then we'll go back to it.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm totally wrong. We're not there yet. Okay. Fei and the others go in search of information about where the last Anima Relic is, and they split from Elly.
Yes, okay.
And so Elly feels this premonition that she needs to go back to Nisan, like something bad's going to happen there.
Yeah.
So she goes back there while they go look elsewhere. This is when Ramsus shows up and attacks Nisan, looking for Fei.
Yes.
And he grabs Elly and he's like crushing her, and he's like baiting Fei out with threatening to kill her. And as he's like crushing her, this is not clear to me, but I think she uses some kind of anti-type power to like freeze.
It doesn't.
Or to freeze
visually,
Ramsus.
I can't tell what happened.
And that's due to its abstract presentation because they're not actually blocking the scene.
He just kind of like moves backwards.
They just have a picture in the background, and they just have like Ramsus and Elly talking to each other.
That's how it goes.
And he's in his Omni gear or whatever. But Anyways, I'm not sure, but I think Elly uses some kind of anti-type power to stop him from killing her. And he's like feeling all useless again. Like, I can't even kill her. Like, what is wrong with me? This is not right. And so they have a big back and forth conversation where Ramsus finally kind of reveals his origins a little bit. So what he says is, I was created to have the powers equivalent to those of Emperor Cain.
Right. So that makes a little more sense.
I know they're not saying it outright, but he's a fetching clone of Cain.
But apparently they've made several clones.
Yes.
But they're acting as though this is the one clone.
This is the one that was supposed to be the replacement.
Okay.
He was going to be the one to replace Emperor Cain.
And somehow his powers aren't what they could be because Cain is still alive. If Cain wasn't around, then Ramsus would be even more powerful. So Ramsus is in this perpetual pursuit of power, this unattainable. He's always right on the cusp, and he misses it
It's
every
like
time.
Cain has the last of the powers he needs, and he has to be killed to obtain them.
Yes.
But only Ramsus can kill Cain. Krellian can't do it.
Right.
Miang can't do it.
No, I don't know why.
Because he has some innate power as the clone of Cain that allows him to kill him.
But why?
It's not, I know. It is not explained why.
I got you.
It's just the reason.
Fair enough. And I can accept that. I can accept it. This is in this world, Cain can only be killed by his clone.
He goes on to say, you could say I was to be the ideal form which all people strive to become. However, once he, Fei, was born, I was rejected.
Yeah.
So whatever role Ramsus was genetically engineered to become as the replacement of Emperor Cain, they were like, never mind, Fei the contact is here, we'll use him instead. And they literally threw Ramsus' fetus into a pile of trash. And they show an image of that. It's like he's sort of like half developed in this little test tube.
I don't know that I quite remember seeing that. That's crazy.
I'll show you the image. It's like he's like half formed in this little test tube. And it's really important that you pay attention to the two people, because it's Krellian and there's a different woman who's not Miang in like a blue dress that we have not really seen in the game yet.
Well,
and they're
sounds like this was an important scene that I
they are observing
didn't know
the fetus Ramsus. And then in the next little JPEG that they put in the background, that little fetus is laying in a trash heap in Solaris somewhere. So he says,
interesting.
I was rejected. I was given life in a pile of trash, born in the dark, cold abyss of worthlessness. But I was able to crawl out of there. I was able to survive on my own strength in order to get back at all those who have forsaken me. Despite all of that, I was able to get this far. I was able to provide myself with the warmth that I required to continue living. But he had to come back and intervene in my life one more time. He tried to take away from me again. As long as he exists, I don't belong anywhere. So this is why Ramsus changed so dramatically as soon as Fei entered. Because remember how
he
on
was
top
cool
of thing he was?
Oh yeah.
He was totally in control.
Yep.
He was kind to Margie. He was kind of like almost honorable-esque. And this is why Seitan and Sigurd and Jesse were so persuaded by him back in Solaris. He was very charismatic and totally in control until Fei showed up. And this represented to him a threat to his entire existence. You're the whole reason they forsook me. You're the whole reason I did not fulfill my potential that I was created for. Because you were born, they threw me into a pile of trash as a baby.
So did they think that Fei can kill Cain? Is that the idea?
Yeah, because remember how Cain was the whole time like, make sure, Hyuga, that he's not a threat to us, right?
So Cain cannot be killed, but there's a couple asterisks next to that statement.
The contact.
Fei can do it,
or whatever he is
could do it.
Well, they were creating clones, I think, probably with the intention that they'll create, if they can make a complete enough clone, I guess we'll put it that way, they'll have the ability to kill Cain. Ramsus was that guy, and then Fei
Right.
came around, and they were like, actually, the contact's even better.
I can't believe how quickly they just throw away their old plans.
Yeah, it was good. when something comes up that's better, they just jump on that
I know,
opportunity.
but what happened? Like Fei could have died at certain points. There could have been all sorts of other, but they're all eggs in one basket over and over.
This is the
every
problem.
time. It's unbelievable.
This is the problem with rushing your story in the second half, because you can't fill in these details.
Right, you can't make it. What is it? You can't provide more context. You can't make it seem. You can't provide the additional
convincing
narrative. Yeah, the extra stuff that make it seem
details.
plausible. They just have to get right to the heart of it. And what is it? In the Paul says this in the New Testament. He said, talking about the saints. I can't remember where it is. Something about milk before meat.
Yes.
You must be fed with milk
Yes.
before the meat.
Yes.
And with regards to the story of Xenogear, disc 2 is they're just giving us the meat,
The milk.
but we don't get to.
But we don't have the. Yeah.
We don't get to work our way into it.
Yes.
We just, it's like we're
Yes.
kids that are just being thrown meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
So, anyways, that's what's going on with him, right? And that's why he's able to kill Cain in the scene that takes place afterwards. Because Elly tries to talk sense into him. She tries to, do her motherly anti-type role.
Yes.
And he's like, no,
She goes,
shut up.
I'll always be here for you. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
He goes back, and the Gazel ministry continue to tell him what worth this piece of trash he is. And so he then turns to Miang directly and is like, is this really the limit of my powers?
Because he
abilities?
brings up specifically Elly. He's like, I couldn't even touch Elly.
Yep.
I couldn't do anything to Elly.
Yep.
Like, am I only so good up to the point where this girl can just control my life and
Yep.
just ruin it? Yeah.
And so they're like, no, you have to kill Cain to get the full extent of your powers.
But this is probably the fourth time he's been told that he just needs to do one extra
Yep.
thing, and then he'll have enough power.
They're leading him on.
One more, and
But
then
he's
Graf
so
comes,
desperate.
and here's the real power. But that's not enough.
He's so desperate
Yeah.
that he just takes it, hook,
Right.
line, and sinker every time. So, anyways, before we see him actually face Cain, that's when we get the second Anima dungeon,
Okay, there you go.
where you go through that cave.
The 10,000 years ago thing.
Yeah, and apparently
fun. I liked
there's
it.
a mural. I'll put it on screen. There's a mural. No, I'm not going to talk about it yet because it would spoil something. Never mind. There's a special mural that you might want to pay attention to. Looking at it, it's hard for me to tell what it is, but other people talking about, oh, you can clearly see that this is Cain, and you can clearly see this and that. And it's like,
I saw
don't-
things. I just
I don't know if I see that, but okay.
I saw
anyways,
stuff.
we might return to that mural in a future
Interesting.
episode.
Okay, cool.
There's a mural in that dungeon.
Like
that's
there's
worth-
tons of writing and stuff.
Yeah.
It all looks kind of Hebraic actually. It looks
yeah,
kind
it's
of like Hebrew.
really ancient looking.
Looks older, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird if it's from the Eldridge.
So it's-
that it would as
it's
soon
not
as it
from-
crashed, the people are like
It's
really
not
bad
from
at
the
writing
Eldridge,
now.
it's from the first civilization that came
Wow.
after the Eldridge crash. So there was just the lone surviving
It just seems like they had to
purple-haired
redevelop
woman
writing again.
looking at
Yes.
the horizon. It's like the humanity that sprung after that created a civilization. And
Okay.
it's that civilization.
I keep assuming that there were some people that survived the Eldridge. And I
Well, we'll
believe
find
that's
out more
true.
about that. We'll find out more about that.
But this is making it seem like, no, they started from nothing. They started from absolute scratch and had to learn to write again,
You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see.
Sounds
There's more to learn there.
okay.
Anyways, that's the civilization that built this place where this animal relic is at. They go get it. It's Rico's. They're coming out. Hammer shows up to fight you. And he's been melded to his gear in the same way Nikolai was. He's kind of transformed, right? He's all like, I finally got the power I was looking for. Grelling gave me what I wanted, but he had to pay a pretty heavy price.
Yes, so
Kind of the same as, what was his name? Red Skull, Bishop Stone.
the
To
saying
attain
is,
his power.
you have it all, but it costs you everything.
Yes,
That kind of thing.
That's kind of what happens, and Elly is devastated by what happened to Hammer.
Well, because
And-
we have to kill him.
and devastated by the fact we couldn't do anything to save him here.
Right.
Because you fight him and you kill him, and he's like, "Oh, bro," he says something to Rico though. He's like, "You are the son of the Kaiser. You have to keep living. You have to go back." Something like that. And Rico's like, "Oh, you knew that?" he already kind of knew. He's like, oh, I didn't know you knew that Hammer or whatever. And Hammer's like
Hammer's
final
like, I know everything.
famous words is like, don't underestimate the depth of my information network.
Or my information network. Oh, I was gonna say another thing when we first brought up Hammer. I was gonna say, dang it, Hammer, stop betraying me. Stop betraying me.
Stop freaking betraying me!
So bad.
He
so funny.
needed to feel important. He needed to feel powerful.
He did, and what is
he
the line?
acted out of fear.
Afterwards, yes, absolutely. Afterwards, the line is something something like he looked like he was happy that we killed him.
Yeah.
Like he didn't enjoy living like that, but he couldn't do anything else because he's too afraid.
Yeah, he's kind of happy it all ended.
Yeah, he's like,
over.
oh, okay, that ended
finally-
about how it should.
I couldn't stop myself from doing this,
Right.
but I'm glad you stopped me.
Yeah, sure, that
when
works.
It's all said
I
and
like
done,
that.
right? And
was
Ellie's
interesting.
devastated by that.
Yeah.
And this is when Fei decides, like, you probably shouldn't be fighting with us anymore. This
Yeah.
isn't going to work out.
No, when he first tells her, she's not happy about
She's
it.
pissed. But he's kind of right.
No, he is.
However,
he is.
before we get that scene, then we get the scene where Ramsus kills Cain. He like decapitates
Oh
him.
yes. So it's the weird Satan world. It's the weird.
He's like
floaty-
there in all the paintings and
Because
wherever
I
Cain
was
is at.
curious how this worked and what the abstraction is that they're getting at based
With
on
that.
this type of artistic
I have
interpretation.
literally no idea.
It's crazy. It's like, is this just a telepathy and then they're just showing them in the same place, but they're not really in the same
I
place?
don't know.
Cain is clearly in somewhere, but there's like walk pathways and there's like places, and it seems to be an actual place, like
Yeah.
a physical place somewhere that's just surrounded by paintings and it's black.
Yes.
I don't know why Cain loves those paintings so much.
He loves the contact.
He
he loves Faye's
apparently does.
art is dope.
But Faye's the one that was going to kill him. He's afraid of him. Anyways,
I
it's
don't know, dude.
weird
I don't know.
stuff.
I don't know. However, in fact, here's a funny note I put down. I wrote, Ramsus has been manipulated into killing Cain. He's the only one who can do it. And I put in parentheses, why? Look this up, as you were saying, right? And then I put, well, he's the clone of Cain, but beyond that, they don't elaborate on this. So I have no idea.
Just
but
for
it has
whatever reason.
something to do with whatever innate powers he inherited as the genetic clone of Cain. He's the only one who can kill him.
And also, why is Cain immortal? That's,
Yeah, they talked about the treatments.
They were artificially, but was that the case the whole time? They were, because the Gazelle's like, we can't kill Cain, but it's like, no, just don't give him the treatments. He'll die. Just like, go kill him.
I wonder if they.
He's
I
dead.
don't know. Maybe they both have.
Is it a rule, thou shalt not kill Cain?
Equal levels
Or
of connections and power in terms of who serves them, right? So it's like.
when they say I cannot kill Cain, it could be that.
Well,
Like,
it's
we
like,
cannot
well, you're
get
saying why don't they
close
cut
enough.
off his genetic or his treatments, his life-extending treatments?
Right.
But it's like, maybe they don't have the power to do that because
Right.
Cain is being served by loyal people on this side who administer it, and they would have to literally wage war against Cain to like kill all of his followers. But it's like,
To do that.
is that worth it if we're at equal levels of, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I totally know what you're saying. So the idea of, we can't kill Cain isn't
He's too
the
strong.
technical.
They're at a stalemate
He's
of
immortal.
influence and power.
Yeah,
within
but
Satan.
it's the we can't do it. Like our hands
Yeah.
are tied. Or also the Cain is destined to live forever. It doesn't mean that he's literally immortal. It just means that it has been determined that Cain has to live, and then they're going to do this thing to artificially keep him alive.
Yes.
Right? Something along
all
those
part
lines.
of the
That makes sense.
resurrection of God, time of the gospel stuff.
Yes.
And their original plan for that, which is over the course of 10,000 years, Cain's mind has changed on it.
Yeah.
Crowleyan is now in the mix of this, and he's kind of doing his own thing with that. Mihang is also part of that. And Graf is doing his own thing, and the Gazelle ministry
it's
are
very
the only ones that
confused.
seem to be dedicated to the original
Or
plan
Gazelle,
are the
right?
Gazelle ministry.
And I think I know why.
Yeah.
It's because they're computers. they are. They're whatever mind state they were at the time their brain was uploaded to the computer.
Yeah.
is unchanged. The zeros
That's
and ones
an interesting
are
theory.
no different.
Yeah.
So they can still interact and do whatever. But as far as them changing their personality or changing or evolving or
I like that.
I think that they can't. They're literally incapable. And it's so funny because they're always talking down about Cain. They're like, Cain, he's got that body, that idiot. He is so much like below us. We've got the real power. We're computer people, and we can. But it's like I think that's in part what they're missing is that they can't like change. They can never change. They will always be what they were when they were uploaded.
Right. That's. I like that. That's actually really plausible.
Sweet.
Okay.
I got something right.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah. So then Ramsus just kind of like, boop, just like
Yep, cuts his
one
head
sword
off.
poke, just like,
Cuts his
and
head
then Cain's gone. And it's like I thought we were gonna get a reveal on who Cain was, but he's dead.
So
and maybe we will.
here's
but he's
here's
just-
why I
he's
think they
gone.
don't reveal Cain's face. This is because it's like if Ramsus is
he
the clone of
is he
Cain,
the captain of the Eldritch?
right? If Ramsus is the clone of Cain, does that mean Ramsus' face is
Then it would
is
be
Cain's
sibling.
face? However,
Right.
if that were the case, then Cain would have known all along Ramsus was his clone.
Did Cain not know?
It doesn't seem that Cain realized Ramsus was capable of killing him. Otherwise, why would he let him within
You're
10
right.
feet to kill him in the first place? So there's a perfect works explanation for this
okay.
that we'll get into some other time.
Okay, sounds good.
But Ramsus does not look like Cain for a reason.
For a reason.
So that they could disguise the fact he was
Sure.
the clone of Cain and allow him to get in there and kill him.
Well, if Id can be Fei, then anything's on the table.
Correct!
Okay.
Oh, one other thing I was going to put here, though, is that, okay, so we have these 3 different like visions of humanity. Krellians, Cains, and the Gazel
Gazel.
Ministries.
Krellian seems to be the
However-
real one in charge.
Krellians is going to become more clear as to what he's looking for. But if you have read the novel Childhood's End, you'll probably
still
get
haven't.
a clearer view of what the idea for Krellian's character is, because his name is not supposed to be Krellian. It's supposed to be Karelin.
That's the Japanese.
The
It's
Japanese.
Kareran. Yeah.
It was spelled wrong in the transliteration. So yeah, his name's supposed to be Karelin, and Karelin is like legitimately just lifted straight out of Childhood's End. I will very briefly summarize kind of what that book is about without spoiling it too much. Karelin is one of the alien overlords. He's like the leader of the alien overlords that come to Earth. And for a long time, they don't contact humanity at all. They're just like their ships are sitting above these cities for like decades. And the idea is that they're going to have this very slow introduction to humanity where they just like, they do it in such degrees.
That's smart.
Where if they had just done it all at once, it would just be way too freaking scary and people would have gone into pandemonium. They just like got them used to the fact that we have alien ships above our cities for 2 decades and nothing's happened and we're just kind of used to that now. And then we'll finally reveal one of the aliens to you. You'll see his face and it's like, oh my gosh, you look freaking nuts. But it's like by
And then
degrees,
let that sit for a while.
by degrees, they're just preparing them. Preparing humanity for the next stage of their evolution. And to what ends that is, I'll actually go maybe into more detail once we get to the end of Xenogears, and I'll put a spoiler warning on it for the book.
Okay.
But Karelin in that story is overseeing this evolution of humanity into this new state. And Krellian is kind of doing the same thing in Xenogears through his genetic engineering.
Oh, right.
Right? So they're trying to get humanity to this perfect state that they want for their purposes. So that's where Krellian kind of comes from. That's the inspiration that Krellian is drawn from, is Karelin from Childhood's End.
Okay.
Everyone should read that book. It's fantastic. Arthur C. Clarke is a beast. Okay. Now the Ministry can use the Geisha key because Cain is dead. So Geisha key, again, spelled incorrectly.
Yeah.
It should have been Goetia, Goetia, instead of Gaetia.
Yeah.
And so what this is a reference to is something
I
called
had to look this one up.
the Lesser Key of Solomon,
Right. Yeah.
which is like a 17th century grimoire on demonology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of nuts. So grimoire, this term is used a lot in like Vagrant Story. It's essentially like a textbook or like a spell book where you learn how to perform magic spells, or you have like bestiaries on all the demons, and it's this mythical magical book where you learn magic from.
Yeah.
That's what a grimoire is. So the Gosha.
This key specifically
Yeah.
is for the releasing of demons from the world.
Yes.
Right.
And it was
so you
written
can
by
cause
some
a flood of
anonymous
demons
person.
to show up.
It was written by some anonymous person in like the 17th century. It's like a book on freaking demons and magic spells and dark magic and stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What does this say about it? It's divided into 5 books. You have the Ars Gosha, the Ars.
the Ars Gosha. That's where this comes from.
Theurgia Gosha, the Ars Paulina, the Ars Almadel, the Ars Notoria. And it's all, again, related to this summoning demons and stuff. That's what the Geisha key is a reference to.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Kind of cool to learn about it. It doesn't have like that much true relevance to Xenogears story necessarily.
Oh, okay, just the name was kind of cool. And it's
But,
sort of relevant to exorcising demons. No.
Yeah.
What's the opposite of exorcising demons?
Summoning them.
Summoning demons. There you go. That's the word.
But what it does, what the Geisha key does in Xenogears world is essentially what that virus that Krellian sent out with the nano-machines was meant to do, which is it triggers the right genes in people to transform into whales, to mutate. And it does it on a way larger scale than the other ones did. So they're actually able to use that. And people start turning into whales again, despite the nano-machine treatments they've been receiving.
Yes.
Also interesting is that the 12 Gazel Ministry members are named after the 12 tribes of Israel,
yes,
which are the 12 sons of Jacob. Jacob's the grandson of Abraham. So you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob's 12 sons, which are Dan, Joseph, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Judah, Dinah, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, and Naphtali. Now, it also tells which people they're aligned with. So Dan, the Gazel Dan, is aligned with Bart.
He's not aligned with Dan?
No, he's aligned with Bart.
Apparently Dan's a beast of a fighter.
I forgot about Dan. Dan's actually coming back in the story pretty soon.
Oh, are you kidding?
So Joseph is aligned with Billy. Gad is aligned with Rico. Asher is aligned with Sidon. Zebulun is aligned with Ramsus. Judah is aligned with Corellin. Dinah is aligned with Elly. Reuben, Simeon, we don't know. Levi, we don't know. Issachar, we don't know. And Naphtali is aligned with Graph. So the Gazel are planning to take the bodies of Corellin and Graph. So who knows how they feel about that. And Ramsus too.
That's interesting.
Anyway, those are where the anima relics are, right? In those gears.
Something tells me Corellin is going to subvert the Gazel ministry as well.
I think Corellin is
he's clearly the one in charge, and if there's ever a conflict, he's like, hey, unplug you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
That's that.
Okay, so the party starts to make a plan to go and fight back. This is where Fei tells Elly, you can't come with us. Like, and he says it in a really harsh way. You're just going to get in our way. You know, like, you're useless to us now. Like, this kind of language. And she's, runs away crying. And everyone's
like, dude, that was too rough.
That was way too harsh.
Was it Margie in particular?
Margie and even Bart.
Yeah.
Sidon, they were all telling him he's way too harsh.
Say that was too rough. Go back.
You shouldn't treat women like this.
And we're like, yeah, all right.
And he's like, look, but I did it because she wouldn't listen to me otherwise. She's not just going to not come because I say don't come. I have to make her think we don't want her.
This is so
to get her to run away.
Yes.
And they're like, I get it, but maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should stick together.
Try explaining.
We know how you feel about her. We know how she feels about you. Maybe it's time to actually tell her that.
Right.
Maybe it's time to actually, like, I mean, you kind of have, but not
They've
like
been
upfront.
avoiding
The actual
discussing it for so long.
saying I love you, using the L word. Right?
The L word.
They've avoided that to this point. Like, it's time to do that. So he goes in there, and I really love this. It kind of brings together some of the things I was talking about earlier. He tries to explain it to her in gentler terms as he goes into a room to explain it, right? Like, listen, he says something like, your body doesn't just belong to you. I don't like the way that's phrased, but the idea of it is you are more important. Like, your life doesn't just belong to you.
the people.
It's not your body, it's your life, I think, would be more correct. Does not just belong to you, belongs to the people of the world. You're the mother Sophia. Like, you are a symbol that is like vital to the hope of the world. Like, you cannot freaking die, which is why you can't come on this suicide mission we're about to go on.
Exactly.
And she realizes that, right?
She knows it, but her thing is like, I can't be apart from you, though.
Yeah, and I really loved this. A lot of Ellie's dialogue is so good in this.
Since
too.
she's matured, she's been like...
She's phenomenal.
Very good.
She's just full of wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's what Sophia is.
Sophia means wisdom in Greek.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that's why it's the fourth stage of anima development in Jungian.
Well, wisdom is the feminine attribute. That's why Zelda has the Triforce of Wisdom.
Yeah.
Wisdom also in going way back, the goddess of Mother Nature was also the goddess of wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's even true in the Jewish religion. If you go back far enough towards more of the Canaanite religion-ish, similar to where Judaism may have come from before Egypt, there's the goddess Asherah, which is the goddess of wisdom. She also represents trees and stuff, and it's very much like that's the final stage as far as the consciousness goes. The final stage of a woman is the wise, the source of wisdom, more or less. Yeah, she's embodying that very well.
So she starts to describe how she came to discover that she loves Fei. Remember a little earlier, she was like, I gotta sort out my feelings. I gotta find out what I really feel, right?
Yes.
I need some time away from him.
Yes.
Now she knows what she feels. And she's about to describe how she came to that conclusion. And it's, oh my goodness, it almost brought me to tears. It's so freaking relevant and true to real life relationship. It's so good. She says something about how early on in their relationship, she saw some parallels in the things that they had suffered. So she saw some similarities there. She was kind of drawn to him because she didn't want to feel alone anymore. She had felt so alone in her suffering, like she's the only one who's experiencing these things that she can't explain. This other entity inside of her that's awakening, and these powers that she doesn't know how to control, and
she's running away.
And she's running away from that.
She meets Fei, who's running away.
Who's running away from that, and he has similar experiences,
Right.
and it's like she's drawn to him because, someone who understands.
Yeah.
I don't have to be alone anymore. That was the initial reason why she was drawn to him, right? And that's actually not a good thing for building a healthy relationship, because if you're using this person to run away from those problems and to not look at yourself, right? To kind of avoid the pain of digging in there to find out what's going on. And you're just hoping this person will help you not feel alone. You're using that person as a means to cope or deal with your problems rather than dealing with them yourself. That person becomes to you your method of you're using them as a way to help you deal with stuff.
Yeah.
Rather than actually doing the painful introspective work of figuring out what's going on in yourself.
What is Carl Jung has a famous quote. It says, beware of unearned wisdom. Something like that.
Yes.
So it's you can get what you need, but if you just get it from someone else and you don't go through the trials yourself, it's not going to have the value to you that it should. There's another thing with their relationship, though, which goes back to the whole fear thing. They bonded over the fact that they were both afraid.
Yep.
That's not right.
No.
And it's the thing you're afraid of, I'm afraid too. Let's both be afraid together.
And it's good.
That's fine initially. Yeah.
But it's gotta,
you
can't
have to
rely
go past
on that.
Yeah. You've got to move past that at some point, because a relationship that is literally based on being afraid of something is not one that's destined
That's
for
not a foundation
longitude.
that can make it last.
I don't think so.
And this is why a lot of relationships don't they don't last long.
Right.
Because that is kind of the foundation. It's like you find a similarity or you find some kind of aspect of that person that makes you feel like you're not alone, or that you're afraid to express, and it's like, oh, with this person they can make me feel better about myself. I feel more confident when I'm with them.
The young people in particular fall into
I
that.
feel like maybe like I feel needed by this person, so I feel like I'm valuable because they need me. There's all these things that like get set up as the foundation of the relationship that cannot last. And it's why they go bad after a certain amount of time, because it's like you're not actually developing. You're not developing your inner opposite. You're not developing your persona, your inner self. Your complete whole ego. It's not
your wholeness.
going. They're actually
self.
holding you back in this like comfortable place where it's like I can remain right here and not do the scary introspective work, and they make me feel not alone in this space.
And you think you can.
But you get to a point where like that's no longer good enough. Like you're not moving forward. You're not progressing anymore. And since she has now had this awakening, right, of this other entity inside of her, the antitype, she has matured like exceptionally within this very short span of time. It's like within 3 weeks she's like this mother of all humanity who's just like full of all this wisdom.
Yes.
And having accepted that new role, she didn't know how to feel about Fei anymore because she realized that's what that relationship was kind of built on at the time. So then she comes to realize throughout what's happened in Disc 2 that the love is actually deeper than that. And Fei echoes the sentiment. So she's like, I don't need you because you help me not feel alone anymore, or because, I used you to run away from my problems. I love you because I actually love you, like the real healthy way. And Fei says a similar thing. He says, I was also running to you. I have to solve my own problems. I can't throw my problems onto you. And that's when people, I think, can really work through some of those faulty foundations they originally set their relationship on, is when they realize you're not responsible for my development. I am.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to support me through that, and I can support you through yours, but I can't fix you, and you can't fix me, and you're not supposed to.
Right.
I have to face this stuff myself. I have to do that introspective work myself, and I'll lean on you for support if you're willing to do that, but it's not your responsibility to make me better. And that's what so many relationships do. They expect that person to fulfill a role that makes them feel better. And that's not how you should do it. And they've both realized this, and their love is genuine and real and deep.
So there's a brief graph, if you can picture it in your mind. There's 2 items here, and then there's one down here in the middle. So this one here says that this is your current state. This is who you are right now. Over here is where you want to be or where you're going. But you cannot move from here to here. Because humans have a more, you remember how I mentioned, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, the shattering mirror versus the rippling, right? So a liquid can go from here to here, no problem, right? But a solid, which is what we are, at least what we want to be. We don't want to be liquid, that's too weird, it's too difficult. You can easily integrate things, which is fine. But you're not a thing. You don't become a whole thing unless you're solid, right? And so you've got this thing. This is the broken up part, right? So in order to move from this point to this point, from where you want to be, you have to first break. You have to descend into chaos and then reascend into a new thing. So like a plate can't turn into a bowl. You first have to destroy the plate and then re-piece the fragments together into a bowl if the bowl is what the plate is seeking to become. There's no liquid way to form it into that. If there is, that's fine. There tends to not be. This is how life works, right? So what people want is to go from where they are to where they want to be, direct with no issues, right? And sometimes other people can help you feel like you've made it there. And I didn't have to descend into chaos. I'm lucky. I'm so lucky. I didn't have to, but the truth is, you just took the plate and slid it into the bowl spot, and you're calling it a bowl now. You have to descend, and this is the idea of beware of unearned wisdom. This is the idea. Is anything that tells you can go from this spot to this spot without fracturing yourself, without descending into chaos and then re-arising, is beware of that, because it's not lasting, it's fake, right? And the only person that can rebuild your conscious ego or whatever back up into this new spot is you. Nobody else can do it for you.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the idea there. That's
I had another
thought
thought as you're going through that, and I wonder if this might have anything to do with that battle screen transition changing. The alchemy idea, the refiner's fire.
Yes.
So it's the same concept, but just you're turning steel into a liquid and then reforming it into a new shape.
A better.
Right. So it's kind of sidesteps the analogy you're making where you have to shatter, you can't liquid, but you could melt down a solid into a liquid
and then
reshape it, cool it, and back into a solid again.
And that is the idea of, but because liquid, in order to reshape it, you have to first melt it down.
And maybe
you have to take what is ordered and turn it into an unordered blob.
Maybe that had something to do with the choice of the battle screen transition change. So it's like in that
instead
Solaris
of breaking, you're
arc,
melting.
They are in kind of this moment where it's like the pinnacle, especially for Fei and at least Saiten's realization of what's going on with Fei. I wonder if that's their refiner's fire moment, the belly of the whale moment for the party, particularly with like Elly and Fei.
I think it still works with what I was saying, because rather than breaking, they're being melted, which is easier to integrate when you're in a melted state than a broken state.
I'm not trying to say like
still works.
What you're saying is wrong, but maybe this is another possible way of looking at it that could use some of the alchemy you were wondering if that had anything to do with the philosophy that went into this game or not.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe.
I still haven't seen much of that.
It's really the same concept, though.
Yeah.
You have to go descend.
You have to
chaos first and be reforged.
But it's scary for your known world to dissolve into liquid.
Yes.
Or to shatter like a mirror.
Yes.
Either way, it's scary, and you don't want to do that. You spend your whole life avoiding that happening, but you have to do that if you want to go up here. That's the idea of, like within Christianity, the idea of baptism, right? You have to descend below the depths.
Yep.
To come back up a perfect being, or whatever. The idea of Christ dying, he had to die. Like this whole, it's part of the way that the mythic structure of our brain works.
Yeah, I agree. And so, anyways, I just really loved this scene. How it just really shows how often we set up our relationships. People feel lonely or they don't feel good about themselves until I should have a significant other, whether it's a wife or husband, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, then they start to feel like, like I'm worth something, I'm valuable. Right. They're using that relationship to feel that way about themselves. Distracting themselves from the problems, using someone else to help solve their problems, to like play a role, to like come and help them so that they don't have to face those things. You can't found your relationship on that. That person should support you and let you know that if you fall, I'm here to catch you, but you have got to do it. You have got to descend into that scary place.
Nobody can do it for you.
And be reforged.
Yep.
Otherwise, the relationship cannot stand long term. And they both figured that out, and their relationship is in a great place to move forward.
And they had to be separate. Anyways, it's very good. There's very good stuff there.
And then they spend, a romantic evening together.
They do. And she's holding that blanket up. It was around this moment that I remembered that someone that basically looks like Elly was Fei's mom, I think.
Well, you're talking about like when in the desert.
Yeah.
The anime cutscene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, I think.
Yeah.
Because he's like freaking out.
Yeah. And she shows up like, you don't be alone,
he's like,
little boy.
Don't leave me, right?
Don't worry, we'll get to that later.
but okay, whatever, that's fine.
Okay. Oh, then the next morning, Fei gives Elly the pendant, the Nissan cross pendant.
Yeah, that's right.
He's been holding it since he got to Lahan.
He's
forgot.
Had that the whole time. He's had it all 3 years, the whole time? Oh, okay, that makes sense.
He's had it since he showed up in Lahan, and he gives it to her.
Because I was wondering when he specifically got that. So he had that when he was delivered to the place. Mm-hmm. Okay.
He had it on him the whole time. Okay, then you get a scene with Margie and Elly and Nisan kind of talking. about men. They're so selfish. They want to do everything, and they tell us we're worthless. We can't help them. That's what Margie's saying, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And Elly is motherly, explaining that's not
she does a
necessarily
great
the
job.
case.
Yeah.
That's kind of that is what it is. But then Elly starts to talk a little bit more about remembering how she felt when she first came to Nisan. The first time I visited here, I had the most amazing feeling, familiar, sad, like I had visited here many times in my dreams. Remember, at the beginning of the disc, they were kind of likening memories to dreams. It's like it's dream-like, but it is a memory. So she's referring to it as a dream, but these are her memories.
There's something Freudian about that, or maybe almost more like.
Well, this dream interpretation is a big psychoanalytic thing. Right?
The idea being your dream is made up of the fragments of memories, right?
Yeah.
So it's picking from your memories to create the dream.
She says, I know where each room is and what's in them. I just know I must have been here in the distant past. Before, if you had spoken of this, I'd have brushed it off with a laugh, but now I can more or less believe it. The things I couldn't do then, I'm probably trying to do now. So it's like the antitype, which she couldn't accomplish 500 years ago, she's seeking to rectify by accomplishing it in this life. And so it's like Elly is ready to do what she couldn't do last time as Sophia.
So wasn't Margie supposed to be something along the lines of an incarnation of Sophia?
I don't think so. She's just the current leader of the Nisan Church, Nisan Church. But with Sophia, the second advent of
She's
Sophia,
like,
she's the actual founder of it.
And
She's
Margie's
the one in charge.
perfectly willing to.
Yeah. But it's like
forgo.
all of the mothers who were in charge had a lineage after Sophia died. And Margie is part of that lineage, which is actually connected to the Roni Fatima line, too. They're related cousins, right? So anyways, but now that Elly is Sophia, it's like she's the one leading the church, not Margie. So Margie would, I guess, be the second in command or something.
Yeah.
Okay, then you go to Mahanon, which is revealed to be the hull of the Eldridge. They have that shot that just pushes right onto
It
the
raises
word.
out of the water, right?
Yeah, and that's in reaction to the geisha
Yeah.
key and all the people turning into wells, because all the screams of the wells resound, and that raises the Eldridge out of the ocean.
Yes.
Because
So-
God is in there, right?
Yes.
And it's like the time for God's revival.
Right. The time of the gospel.
But
The resurrection.
Mahanon, what they've been calling Mahanon, they push on to the actual word Eldridge. And that's, I guess,
Yeah.
if you hadn't figured it out by now, it's like, here it is, everyone. The ship is
Here it
Mahanon.
is.
The ship is anyways. But they really stayed on the nose here, just in case you didn't get it at this point, that humans were an alien life form. It's all part of the narration, the text on the screen here. That they crashed with the ship 10,000 years ago. Humans don't belong, or they did not naturally evolve on this planet. And then you fight a boss called Deus.
Yeah. And they're saying they show the embryo,
The embryo from the opening
and they're
scene.
like, that thing we just
It's the
killed
same
is
organism.
is God, basically.
There it is.
That was the God.
And it's rotting. It's decaying.
Yeah, it's
'Cause
all screwy.
Been there for 10,000 years, sitting alone in the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Just rotting away.
Well, it seemed to be almost frozen or something. There's
Yeah.
a thing that we kind of undo it, and then he attacks us.
Yep.
Yeah, that was strange. I thought it was going to be a bigger deal
Yep.
to kill that thing, but it was
It
just
is a
kind
bigger
of
deal.
nothing.
It's just rushed so much,
Ah,
and there's
well,
a lot more
yeah.
to it that we still don't know yet.
Okay.
But that is the organism that was growing in the opening cutscene that they
Yes.
saw on the screens. It's that
Yeah.
Deus boss, but it's so decayed and rotting at this point that we can kind of just kill it,
just step on it and squish it and move it out of the way.
and kill him.
Yeah, he was big, but
I
that was
love-
interesting. That was
I love the
crazy.
way they introduce it, though. The dialogue that Fei, or the narration that Fei says here, is in the depths, we saw an alien form. It was partially rotted and petrified, a giant grotesque being. It gave an inexplicable air of intimidation. I liked that particular phrase. Perhaps it was more than a gut reaction. Perhaps it was the fear of the absolute that came from the very depths of our inherited instincts. So there's something to that. Like he
Well,
has something in his genes that makes him afraid of this thing.
That's the Gazelle Ministry limiter thing, right? So it's like
It
the
might
Gazelle
be- it
Ministry
might
took
be more than that.
concept and applied it to them. They're like, you have an innate fear of God, but we're going to give you this thing, and now you have an innate fear of us.
I
Sweet.
think the limiter gave them an innate fear of the Gazelle Ministry. I think this is an inherited instinct that goes deeper than a limiter.
Yes, no, I agree. I'm just saying that the raw genetics of humans that cause them to naturally be afraid of God served as the inspiration for a limiter. So they lifted the genetic code and were like, this limits,
I think
and
you're
then
right.
we'll artificially, and then they made the limiter. Anyways, I'm trying to get around that.
I think you're right.
Yes.
So after you defeat Deus, which was decayed and nearly dead already, there's this little CGI cutscene that plays as the Veltal sort of enters into Raziel's tree.
Yeah.
I took note of the fact there was no sound design at all in that. It felt like a rushed element. It was just like music playing, and it's just like this robot walking with no sound, opening this giant freaking metal door with no sound. I had done sound design, so I pay attention to that stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
So, Raziel. Let's talk about what that reference is.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I looked up this one.
So, Raziel is an angel in Jewish mysticism. It's an angel, well, more specifically within the Kabbalah, who's a keeper of secrets and an angel of mysteries. Knows the secret things of God.
Okay.
I think that this angel is described as kind of like sitting, like at the throne of God, and like literally writing down in a book, all the secrets of creation as God speaks it, like everything God says, like Raziel would write it down in this book. So like all the deeper secrets of creation and the secrets of the universe and everything that God established, like Raziel like wrote this stuff down.
That would be along the lines of like Thoth in Egypt, or Hermes, sort of. But probably more Thoth in Egypt, or the scribe who knew the mysteries and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Raziel, under the alternate name Galazur, is the revealer of the rock, described as the ruling prince of the second heaven. He is said to expound the Torah's divine wisdom and protects the ministering angels from the living creatures that uphold the universe. There's some more sources where I wrote some more stuff about this. In Jewish tradition, Raziel stood so close to God's throne that he could hear everything God said. Then Raziel wrote God's secret insights about the universe down in the Sefer Raziel HaMalek. It's a book, right, that he wrote it down in. According to legend, Raziel gave Adam and Eve the Sefer Raziel HaMalek after they were expelled from the Garden of Eden as punishment for eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Other angels were upset that Raziel had given them that book, so they cast it into the ocean. Eventually, the book washed ashore, and the prophet Enoch found it and added some of his own knowledge before he was transformed into the archangel Metatron. The Sefer Raziel HaMalek then passed on to the archangel Raphael, Noah, and King Solomon, legend says. So, essentially, this goes on to say, Raziel is an important angel, according to his name, is connected with the mysteries of God. He's mentioned only in sources going back to the esoteric teachings of the Talmudic period, where he appears in 3 sources. One of them was when Moses is ascending to heaven in order to receive the Torah. He encounters on his way the angel Gazal, or that alternate name for Raziel, who is called Raziel because he hears from behind the divine curtain all that is going to happen in the world, and this he reveals to Elijah.
When it talks about the divine curtain, that's likely the veil of the temple.
Yeah. So I don't think that it's not lost on me, the symbolism here, that the Raziel's tree, the supercomputer that has all of God's wisdom of this world in it, is on these giant 2 tablets.
Yeah, like
that look like the 10 Commandments that Moses descended with, that Raziel revealed to him probably.
Although they're pretty big for Moses to hold.
They're huge. And this is like a supercomputer. This served as basically the central computer of the
Of
Eldritch
the ship.
Like the whole ship's like central computer is the Raziel's tree, the 2 tablets. All of the data, all the processes, all of the secrets of God were inscribed in that computer that is Raziel's tree.
That's pretty cool.
That's where it's all at. And so you're going in there to like access that data, and Citan's kind of like on the computer there.
Yeah.
And as you're doing that,
how
what's
could
his name?
Citan possibly like get through? It was amazing enough at the Ethos where he was like, this massive database. Oh, I know exactly where to go and exactly how to extract the exact. Oh, here you go, and it's like right there, so fast.
10,000 years
He's
ago, computer interfaces.
They're
that have
similar,
been completely
apparently.
lost. I mean, it's not even just in here though. It's like when you're first ascending Babel Tower as well. He's like in there.
Yes.
Pushing buttons
Yep,
and
yep,
activating stuff, and even for that, like, what is it? What they named Fort Jasper, that weapon that they fired the laser
that
from.
thing.
Like
That's
they're
right.
able to get in there and use those computers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, these interfaces were created for humans 10,000 years ago. They have no
Apparently
memory of
they're-
whatsoever. Who
they're
probably
good.
spoke a completely different language.
Yes. And he could just get
You just,
right into
I
it.
know exactly what all these buttons do. Bam, 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 bam. I know how to read all this data. Whatever the process.
Oh, well, that's all good.
I like the narration here. Fei says, we came to an enormous cavern that was big enough to swallow the whole capital of Ave.
Yeah, that's
It's
pretty cool.
huge. And I even remember, even from the beginning cutscene, the anime cutscene, the very beginning of the game, they
Yeah.
have this panning shot where they show
And they
Raziel's
show
tree,
the
and it's just
2 things.
giant
It's like
space.
A city or something.
It's
is
like,
there,
yeah, it's like
basically.
all these little lights. You can see all the individual
Yeah.
rooms, and it's just absolutely massive. The Eldritch was huge.
Yeah.
This huge arc going through space, carrying millions of people in it. Massive starship. It just kind of sells this freaking giantness of this freaking thing.
Yeah.
So it could have swallowed the whole capital of Ave, this room, right? In its center were 2 gently glowing objects. It was the source of divine wisdom. It was Raziel's tree. And the cavern itself was a giant computer called Raziel, the wisdom of God hidden within Raziel. We found the unthinkable when we accessed its data. A large unmanned strategic weapon and its battalion of terminal interface weapons traveling from star system to star system, and a gigantic mothership used to carry them. So the Eldritch was carrying some kind of weapon. And the fact that they say unmanned strategic weapon, to me, implies like AI.
Yeah.
So like a weapon that was controlled by an AI, right?
This implies to me that there's a thing out there destroying universes and it's going to come destroy this one, like within the game, you know? Because
This-
it's autonomous. It's doing its own thing regardless of whether we
Yeah.
don't control it, you know?
This ship, the Eldritch, was carrying a very dangerous weapon, an unmanned strategic weapon that was going from star system to star system. And that something went really wrong with that, and that's why he self-destructed the ship and it crashed, and the whole game started. So he goes on to say the creation of the Malak angel, God's army, to reign over the vast universe with, and the construction of a divine ark. These weapons were called Yahweh. You talked about how that was transformed from Yahweh, which they didn't want to say.
And it's Yabai, which is
Yabai,
Yabai.
which became
Yabai
Yabai.
is Kansai of Yabai, and it means dangerous or be careful.
Go back to episode 3
It was early on.
or
I can't
2 or
remember.
maybe actually 1. That might have been in 1 where we talked about that.
Might have been
I think it was
episode
1, episode 1.
Okay.
All the Richard Honeywood section of that first one we did.
So I wasn't here for episode 2.
Yeah, I think it was episode 1. The Interplanetary Invasion Weapon System. What the Gazel Ministry was pursuing was right here. According to the data, the giant rotting organism we just defeated was in fact the nucleus of this system. We were on the verge of accessing the data for the object called Zohar. We'll get into that later.
That's again Jewish
Yeah,
mysticism.
the Zohar is like a commentary on like ancient Jewish scripture and mythology. That I think it was like in 1200s or something like that. It was discovered or written by a man in 1200 something,
That's all good.
depending on what you choose to believe. The central neural circuit, the power source controlling the entire system, from the weapons to the mothership when suddenly he appeared. He's talking about Krellian. Krellian showed up with his dudes. And Graf is there. And you have a battle against Graf.
Oh, yeah, this is fascinating.
Did
Seeing
you-
these antagonists interact with each other
Yeah.
is just absolutely fascinating because they either treat each other with like they're either indignant or they're indifferent.
Yeah.
And it's unpredictable. I cannot predict how these people will interact when they conflict.
Yeah.
I did go through the battle, but I don't know if anyone else did. So.
Yeah, that's basically I was calling the end of the episode after fighting Graf here and stopping in Raziel's tree. Unfortunately, it's not a place you can save. It kind of just keeps going on to the next scene. I was like, oh, whoops. Can't really save there.
Yeah.
But that's where we decided to play up to, so that's where we're going to stop talking.
Yeah.
The only last note that I have here is you can actually beat Graf in that fight. You're not like intended to win because he's very powerful.
Oh yeah, very much so.
And he can like wipe you out pretty quick if you're not prepared. He's very hard, and you're intended to lose the fight. You lose in the cutscene.
Yeah, I didn't.
But you can beat him, and you can get like a accessory. That's kind
Sick.
of cool.
You get an amulet.
Yeah, I had to fight it a couple times and change my strategy a little bit, but you can beat him. So after that is over, Fei's like exhausted, beat up, and Graf, taunts him a little bit with like, it is the real you kind of thing.
Yes, of course.
The
yes.
real you in there is actually it. He's like, no, he's not. It's not me. I'm not it. They go back and forth on that. Trying to kind of bait him a little bit with giving into his fear and his anger, kind of the stuff we're talking about. Fei's not going to do that. Because he has that bracelet that keeps him from giving into it, right?
Yeah.
And then Graf says something about, I can't remember exactly what he says, something about like removing Fei's soul, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I can pull it up and we can look at it, but Graf is moving forward to take Fei's soul out of his body.
But then Krellian is like,
Krellian stops him.
don't do it yet.
And he's like, Fei is bait for Elly, who I really
He
want
needs the
here.
girl.
I need Fei so that Elly will come try to save Fei so that I can get Elly, which is what
Yes.
I'm after, so don't do that. And he's
And
like, fine.
Graf's like, or what is it? Not as you wish. It was different. It was like do whatever you want kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like mam darohe is the Korean. Mam darohe. It means do whatever you want to do. And then he just leaves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the heck? I was not expecting this at
Yeah.
all. I was not expecting this. I thought Graf and Krellian were going to have
gonna
issues.
fight.
I thought that Graf was at least going to save something. Instead, Graf immediately acquiesces and is like, he's yours.
Yeah.
Suit yourself. I think that's probably
I think
something.
that's probably
He
what
says,
he said.
suit yourself. And that's that. It's crazy.
So then Krellian calls Graf Lacan in that scene again.
Yeah,
He just
But
refers to him as
they
Lacan.
knew each other very well.
They did. Krellian and
Back
Lacan were
500
friends,
years
as
ago.
we found out.
And I was wondering if they are still friends. And
Doesn't seem like
they
it.
aren't, but they kind of don't care about each other. I don't know. I don't know what the situation
Something
is.
has happened in the last 500 years.
For
between
sure,
the two
but
of them.
it's not like Graf hates Krellian. It's
Yeah.
not like Krellian hates Graf. It's not like there's animosity about whatever happened.
It's just they've
but
kind
whatever
of accepted
happened-
it,
Yeah.
and it's just like, this is what it is, kind of
And
thing.
they're just like, it's like they know that it would just be horrible. Like, it's like
It's no use.
they would both go down in nuclear flames if they decided to fight each other. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's not worth fighting, and whatever.
Fine.
But it's weird, because Graf has a plan for Fei. But as soon as Krellian's like, no, like, don't, Graf's like,
I think he realizes he can do what he wants once Krellian gets Elly.
yeah.
It's like, once Krellian gets Elly, I can have Fei and I can do what I want to do.
Hey, actually, that's pretty good. That makes sense. That makes
Fine,
sense.
whatever. It's only a matter of time. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
whatever.
And then Krellian announces that they're going to be crucified in Golgotha, which is supposed to be Golgotha,
That's where Christ was
where
crucified.
Jesus was crucified, outside of Jerusalem. And that's where we're going to stop.
Means place of the skull.
Yep.
In,
Cavalry, Golgotha.
yeah.
Okay, everyone. That was a lot of stuff to get through.
It
I
was.
think we've done the best job we can based on what we know now. We're going to have 2 more play sessions.
Okay.
I was originally thinking play to the end of the game for the next episode,
one?
but this is going to be too much.
So
So I'm going to break it into 2 more. Where you're going to play up to next time, it's a giant, almost like triangular structure called Merkava, and it crashes down into the earth. It's this massive triangle shape structure, and it just like crashes into the earth. It's called Merkava.
Sweet.
Play up to that. The first save point after that thing crashes. That's where we're going to play up to for next time. So that's what we want to do. And then after that, the following week, we'll finish the game.
Sick.
And then we'll do one episode of recap, having guests to discuss some other cool philosophy and responding to some comments.
Okay.
That'll be the end of...
And some Perfect Works stuff there,
Yeah.
right?
The homework for that week will be to read Perfect Works.
Okay.
Rather than
Right.
play something, right? And then that'll be the end of the Xenogears analysis. Thanks everybody for watching. Until next time, have a great week. Peace out.